Chapter 698. At the same time. At a fermented glutinous rice paste stall at the foot of Shao Mountain. Zhang Feng leisurely drank the fermented glutinous rice paste, admiring the small but well-equipped market, pondering about something. Yes, son. Right at this moment, the sound of Gao Can urging a mule could be heard from the foot of the mountain. Behind him, carts carrying cypress leaves, as well as freshly picked pine needles, appeared in a row in this market. Prince Zhang, the match you asked for is here. Gao Can's muffled voice sounded like a clap of thunder from afar. The already quiet crowd in the outpost looked at Zhang Feng, and then at the thing behind Gao Kansas. Then they all looked up at the mountain and the pine forest. Strange expressions appeared on their faces. There were so many things on the mountain. Did they still need to get it from the foot of the mountain? Hearing this, Zhang Feng slowly put down the bowl in his hand under everyone's strange gazes. He glanced at the carts, put down a copper coin, and waved his hand. Follow me. Then, Zhang Feng clasped his hands behind his back. Gao Can, who was behind him, threw the mule cart to the few youths behind him and followed closely behind Zhang Feng. He even pulled out a chi mei staff from his belt and vigilantly looked around. They didn't go up the mountain. Instead, they went around a river at the foot of the mountain and entered a col in the mountain. At this time, an open space had already been opened up in the mountain valley. On the open space, there were many washed white reed leaves, bamboo leaves, and other things. There were even carpenters who had already set up a water wheel and a dozen or so straw sheds. Sounds could be heard coming in and out of the straw sheds. This leaf has insect eyes. No, throw it away. The leaves that the dean wants must be flawless. Who are you trying to fool? If the dean sees this, you'll all roll down the mountain. Before he even entered this flat area, Zhang Feng could faintly hear shouts. After passing through a bamboo forest, the ringing of a mule bell instantly attracted the attention of everyone in this area. The people here were all very young. Except for the carpenters, basically all the faces here were young. When these people saw Zhang Feng, they all hurriedly put down their work and saluted Zhang Feng. Greetings to the dean, Lord Viscount. Zhang Feng felt more and more uncomfortable. Fine, fine, fine. Just call me Dean. I heard you quarreling from afar. What were you quarreling about? Hearing this, a group of young men hurriedly came forward and said, Lord Dean, we were ordered to wash the leaves and dry them here, but this guy is always picky here. Zhang Feng was interested and asked, what did he say? Seeing that Zhang Feng was interested, that person glared at the young man in the long gown and said, he said that the leaves have been gnawed by insects, and have been contaminated. Besides, isn't this how leaves are dried? He insisted that we go dry them piece by piece. The young man complained over and over again. Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to look at the young man in the long gown. The young man was still standing there, neither servile nor overbearing. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little surprised. After checking the leaves, there really wasn't a single flaw. Zhang Feng was interested and asked, what's your name? Lord Dean, my surname is Qian, and my name is Wanli. I'm from Chang'an. Zhang Feng pointed to the drying leaves and asked, what's the meaning of this? Qian Wanli picked up a leaf and said, although I don't know why you asked us to wash and dry the leaves here and build these things here, I know that these things are definitely not matches. They must be of great use. That's why I'm doing this. Otherwise, I think that I should do my best. Even if I'm wrong, I'll know where I went wrong. Zhang Feng was a little surprised. This person was awesome. But he couldn't remember a person called Qian Wanli in history. He didn't know if it was because he didn't study the history of the Tang dynasty thoroughly or he forgot. He asked again, what does your family do? The Qiantong Money House in Chang'an is my father's. Qiantong Money House? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. After thinking about it, there really wasn't such a person in history. He continued to ask, then your family background is quite good. Why didn't you go to the Imperial College? Why did you come to White Deer College to suffer? Qian Wanli gave a fist and palm salute and said, "If one pursues a comfortable life, how can one improve in life? I'm here to learn about finance from you, Sir Dean." Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard that. "Good. If that's the case, I'll leave this place to you. From now on, I'll go up the mountain every night and personally teach you about economics. Are you willing?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng looked at the crowd and said, "Do you know why I'm building this thing here?" Everyone shook their heads. Zhang Feng said again, "It's because this place is one of the cash crops of my college in the future. This is White Deer College's paper mill." Chapter 699. Everyone heard this. Their expressions changed greatly. Paper mill. They knew about it. This thing, not to mention rice paper, even a piece of ordinary yellow paper or straw paper was frighteningly expensive. Not to mention the Xian paper. And this was something that the academy needed. Moreover, this thing was expensive because of its rarity. Every state capital had one or more paper mills. However, each mill could only produce 100 caddies of rice paper every month. With the remaining materials, they could only produce 500 caddies of yellow paper. With the remaining waste, they could only produce the cheap yellow paper. Even so, the output of yellow paper was only about 100 caddies. One could imagine how precious this thing was. But such a paper mill was not something that everyone could run. After all, whoever mastered the paper-making technique was equivalent to controlling a mountain of gold. This was something that everyone locked in a box for fear of being coveted by thieves. But now? The dean was going to give him full authority? Give it to Qian Wanli, a young boy? Qian Wanli was also dumbfounded. As the young master of Qiantong Money House, how could he not know the value of paper? Now the dean was going to pass it to him? Wasn't this equivalent to handing over a mountain of gold to him? What's more, this was something that could make money faster than a bank. Not only that, was the dean going to accept him as a disciple? What did the dean mean? But he did not have time to think too much. After Zhang Feng finished speaking, Qian Wanli bowed excitedly and said, "Student pays his respects to teacher." Compared to Qian Wanli's excitement, the rest of the people were bored. But they did not dare to say anything. After all, he was the dean. What did they dare to say? After all, they were also in the paper mill. Once the paper mill was opened, they would benefit from each other. Why not? But did the dean really know how to make paper? All of them remained skeptical. Zhang Feng did not care so much. According to the process of the simple paper-making technique that he still vaguely remembered, he carefully checked the workshop. Then, he called Qian Wanli to the side and said, "Boy, from today onwards, you are the first disciple of me, Zhang Feng. You should feel honored." Upon hearing this, Qian Wanli wanted to kneel down, but he also knew the rules of the mountain, so he anxiously scratched his ears and cheeks. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Forget about the ceremony for the time being. You just have to remember that the paper-making technique I taught you cannot be taught to anyone without the permission of the academy. 3 years later, when I start printing publications on the mountain, I will arrange for you to work in the Ministry of Works and then teach in the academy. Are you willing?" The Ministry of Works? Teaching in the academy? Buzz. Qian Wanli almost fainted from this sudden happiness. He hurriedly bowed. "I will remember your teachings." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "That's enough. There's no need for such formalities. I'll give you a mission. Within 3 years, if the White Dew papermaking mill opens less than 300 branches in the Great Tang, you can pack up your stuff and get lost." Qian Wanli was a little dizzy. But at this moment, Zhang Feng fumbled for a moment in his sleeve and took out a thick stack of modern papermaking techniques for him. Then, he pointed to Gao Can and the others and said, "Unload the things from the car and wash them. Then, put these things in the oven and bake them until they break with a pinch, fengzi." Fengzi. Fengzi. Just as Zhang Feng was explaining to Qian Wanli how to bleach raw materials, Li Qingqian's voice came from afar. Moreover, the sound of a white cloak that could be seen from afar was rustling on the tree branches. After Zhang Feng hurriedly explained to Qian Wanli, he slowly appeared in the spacious courtyard and looked at Li Qingxian, who was hurrying over. Although Li Qingxian was riding a horse, it was unknown whether he was excited or tired. He said breathlessly, they're coming, the army of 300,000 is coming. As his voice faded away, more than 70 people in the papermaking mill were all stunned. If one listened carefully, one could only hear the roars of pigs and the sound of pigs being driven away. Zhang Feng was also stunned. But after thinking about it, his face darkened and he said, speak properly. Oh, it's 300,000. An army of 300,000 pigs. I've driven them all here for you. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He rubbed his ears and asked, what did you say? How many? 300,000. Damn you, when did Lao Tzu ask you to drive the pigs up the mountain? Li Qingxian was also dumbfounded. He scratched his head and said, a few days ago, didn't you ask me to drive all the pigs up the mountain? Zhang Feng was dizzy. He sighed and said, you're a pig. So many pigs. Are you trying to turn White Deer College into a pig farm? It's over. It's F***ing over. Look at what you've been doing day after day. Zhang Feng was dizzy. As he spoke, he hurried up the mountain. Earlier, Zhang Feng was still lamenting that he had finally found a reliable person to settle the papermaking workshop's matters. However, there was one thing that saved him the trouble. Before he could even get a moment of peace, that damned Li Gan had already caused a huge mess for him. As he walked, Zhang Feng roared, scram! Drive the pigs down the mountain. Chapter 700. Zhang Feng was anxious. It was broad daylight, and early in the morning. How many people could have seen this? He hoped that not many people saw it. At the very least, he couldn't let those lords see or hear it. Otherwise, his plan to rope in Yu Shinan and the other lords would really be ruined. In order to rope in Yu Shinan and the others, Zhang Feng had put in a lot of effort. From the last time they met, to the matter of reciting the poem on the mountain a few days ago, with Li Gang's ability, Yu Shinan and the others should have already known about it, right? Not to mention Li Gang, even the old county official would definitely have told them about this matter. After all, the old county official knew about the matter of roping in Yu Shinan. However, after Li Qingxian's actions, it would be a blessing from the heavens if Yu Shinan didn't die from anger. In the eyes of the literati, pigs were the dirtiest things. How could they be openly chased up the mountain? What was this? White Deer Academy was already disliked by others, so wouldn't it become the laughingstock of others after all of this was done? How would Lao Tzu survive in the imperial court in the future? What a disgrace. Don't you know how to avoid arousing suspicion? When Zhang Feng exited the call, cursing and swearing, and appeared at the market at the foot of the mountain, he almost fainted from the scene. Everywhere he looked, the sounds of pigs could be heard. Flowery, black, white, wagging their tails, their mouths as if they were plowing the ground. As they walked, they overturned all the obstacles along the way. Even the huts that people had built in the market were overturned. The shopkeeper of the stall that had been eating fermented glutinous rice was nowhere to be seen. There was only a group of pigs, happily chewing on the fermented glutinous rice that had spilled all over the ground. Seeing Zhang Feng appear, the commoners who had hidden far away finally came out and wailed, Dean, you have to uphold justice for us. I don't know which bastard chased so many pigs here. Our business. Zhang Feng felt like his head was about to explode. Everyone, don't be anxious. After this, I, Zhang Feng, will send someone to compensate you for all your losses. Now, quickly disperse. When the crowd heard this, they ran away happily. However, there were even more people who hid in the dark, wanting to see what these pigs were doing. Why would these pigs appear here so early in the morning? Where is this? This was White Deer College, built by the Emperor's decree. Furthermore, it was White Deer College that was on the same level as the Imperial College. What was going on? Could it be that some enemy had come knocking on his door? The director was such a nice person. Who did he offend? At this time, the incident at the foot of the mountain had finally alarmed the people on the mountain. Ching Chimo and the others hurried down the mountain. They were dumbfounded when they saw the back of a pig. When they found Zhang Feng, they asked stupidly, "Fengzi, who did you offend? Who the F***ck dares to chase so many pigs to our Shao mountain? Tell me and I'll go burn his house down." F***ck his second uncle, do they really think that there's no one in White Deer College? Zhang Feng angrily pointed at Li Qingxian, who was hiding under a tree in the distance, and said, "It's this bastard." Ah! The crowd followed Zhang Feng's finger and saw that it was Li Qingxian. They were also dumbfounded. "Li Qingxian, what the F***ck are you doing? You should know that once His Majesty finds out about this, do you know the consequences? Did a donkey kick your head? How can you do such a stupid thing? Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and call someone to chase these pigs away." Zhang Feng was anxious. What time was it to talk about this? If they attracted those people, he would be F***king dead meat. Hearing Zhang Feng's roar, a large group of people who came down from the mountain to watch the show finally came down and chased the pigs to a valley in Shao Mountain. This delay wasted at least 6 hours. Looking at the desolate foot of the mountain and the pig dung all over the ground, Zhang Feng felt dizzy. What the F***ck? What kind of stupid thing was this? Was Lao Tzu's brain damaged? Why did he ask him to do this? No matter how much Zhang Feng moaned and groaned, it had already happened. There was nothing he could do. Li Qingxian also knew that this matter was a little too much. He shrunk his neck and came to Zhang Feng's side, asking, "Fengzi, now, what do we do?" In the beginning, Li Qingxian's mind was filled with countless banknotes. However, after seeing Zhang Feng's expression, as if he was facing a great enemy, Li Qingxian realized that he only remembered the banknotes and forgot about his brain. He also knew that he was in trouble. Zhang Feng really wanted to beat him up. However, when he saw Ching Chimo and the others hiding far away, while a hammer was raised high above Li Qingxian's head, Zhang Feng finally sighed and said, "Forget it, forget it. Since it has happened, then let's just say that Lao Tzu is unlucky. Go up the mountain and find Jing Tufu. Kill the pigs on the spot. No need to call, I'm coming." Jing Tufu's muffled voice sounded behind Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng turned around. It wasn't just him. Sun Simiao was also glaring at him with a gloomy face. Seeing that Sun Simiao was about to speak, Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "Elder son, later, I will only give you a satisfactory explanation. Please let me settle this matter first, okay?" Chapter 701. Everyone on Mount Shao seemed to know what was going on. Even Gan Ziyuan was shocked by what the Crown Prince had done. Was this what the Crown Prince had done? But at this time, he also knew the seriousness of the matter. He hurriedly urged the craftsmen to use their power. First, they used wooden stakes and wood to make a simple fence outside the valley. Then, they locked all the pigs inside. Then, under the command of Zhang Feng, they hurriedly built a large shed that he had never seen before. The hut covered an area of 10 acres along a stream. From the hillside to the banks of the stream, all the trees were cut down, leaving only wooden stakes about 2 feet high on the ground. Every 3 feet, another one would be inserted, all the way to the market at the foot of the ruined mountain. Then, a triangular gate made of more than a dozen wooden stakes was built in front of these wooden stakes. Then, bamboo was placed on these wooden stakes. After that, a large number of carpenters and bamboo makers went to work. They fixed the birch leaves, branches, and pine branches that were cut down from the mountain, layer by layer on the wooden stakes. When it was dark, after thousands of people worked together, the simple strange-shaped thing was finally finished. Sun Simiao kept his promise. He sat beside the stream with Elder Gao and watched quietly. When Zhang Feng waved his hand and said it was done, he asked, "My young friend, Zhang Feng, what are you going to do with this thing here?" Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Elder son, do you still remember the pork I braised?" Sun Simiao was surprised to hear that. "You mean, you're going to?" "Yes. I want to kill all these pigs before this thing gets out of hand." Then I'll make the braised meat and smoked jerky that you usually eat. More than 100,000 pigs? You want to kill them all? No matter how hard Sun Simiao thought, he couldn't imagine what kind of visual impact it would cause if all these pigs were slaughtered. At that time, the whole Mount Shao would be shrouded in a layer of bloody smell. Was that really a good thing for a solemn academy? But Sun Simiao didn't ask. After all, since Zhang Feng dared to take over this mess, he must have a way to solve it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng knew that this seemed a little inconceivable, but he also knew that this was unavoidable. However, this D*MN Li Gan had already brought these things up. What could he do? He couldn't just stand by and watch, could he? He had to think of a way to deal with this matter before it became serious. Otherwise, it would really cause a lot of trouble. Zhang Feng wiped the stain on his forehead and said, "You've seen it yourself. Although it's a bad thing, what if this kid can turn it into a good thing?" Sun Simiao was stunned for a moment, but he still shook his head. Even if you have thousands of people on this mountain, even if you don't eat or drink, there are still hundreds of thousands of pigs. It will take a few days to kill them. Moreover, these pigs, even if you have that magical cooking technique, how can you turn them into something magical before they turn bad? This is no different from... Alas. Forget it, forget it. The old man won't ask. Don't disappoint the old man. If there's anything, you can look for me. I'm tired, I'm leaving. Sun Simiao left as he spoke. He simply did not believe that Zhang Feng could slaughter more than 100,000 pigs in such a short period of time, and then turn something rotten into something miraculous. This was no different from a fantasy story. However, his intuition told him that Zhang Feng wasn't joking. This was what made him feel the most conflicted. Sun Simiao simply stopped looking. The more he looked, the more annoyed he became. Once Sun Simiao left, the people of Tonghui Lane gathered around. They looked at the huge unknown building and asked, "Feng Zi, what do you need us to do?" When Zhang Feng saw that they were the old neighbors of Tonghui Lane, he was so moved that he almost cried. Now that something had happened, he had to rely on the neighbors. "Everyone, today's matter is my fault. I didn't make things clear, which led to such a situation. But you don't have to worry. This matter might be the best time to spread the name of our White Deer Academy and Tonghui Lane." The people of Tonghui Lane weren't fools. When they heard Zhang Feng say that, they thought that Zhang Feng was just trying to calm them down. Everyone's eyes turned red. Zhang Feng was speechless. "I'm telling the truth. When have you ever seen me, Zhang Feng, boasting? Do you believe that the braised meat I made will cause a huge uproar in Chang'an City in 3 days?" No one replied to him. Zhang Feng had no choice but to take back his words. He could only instruct them, "This shed is mainly used for smoking and cooking. Go to Du Bing and find him. Ask him to send people down the mountain to buy pots and stoves. The bigger the better. Go home and bring all the pots and stoves you have up here. Also, Old He, are there any kilns here?" Old He rubbed his red eyes and said, "I used to be a kiln, all right then. Bring some of the students from the mountain and ask that bastard Li Gan for some of his servants. Get me a few hundred pigs and shut down all the brick kilns. I'll tell you how to make roast pigs later. The rest of you, forget it, go up the mountain. After all, we don't need so many people. It's fine here." Chapter 702. After some arrangements were made. Although the sky was already dark, only a small part of the simple shed had been built. It would take at least one more day before it was completely finished. Zhang Feng looked at the shed and sat by the water in a daze. At this moment, the gimmick of the imperial edict and the 20,000 dan of grain had already lost its popularity. Zhang Feng wanted to continue making White Deer College the focus of attention and attract scholars to come to him voluntarily to become lecturers. He had originally planned to rely on this new piece of paper. However, he had never expected that the idiot Li Gan would misinterpret his intentions. If this had happened outside of Chang'an City at the same time as the new piece of paper, the visual impact would have been much better. However, there was no time to think about it now. At this moment, he could only think about how he could spread the braised meat shops all over Chang'an City before this matter completely blew up. Only in this way could the matter of driving the pigs up the mountain be aborted before it was even born. Otherwise, he would never be able to find another student. Moreover, more than half of the students he had recruited would be lost because of this matter. What was this? This was a slap to Zhang Feng's face. Moreover, if Guan Long, the Shandong aristocrats, or the people from the Imperial College spread rumors, then Zhang Feng would be in big trouble. However, Zhang Feng wasn't afraid. The people of this era only believed what they saw and heard. As for things that they had never heard of, they would always maintain a hostile attitude. After all, who didn't know about pork? Zhang Feng was in a daze until Qing Chimo, Gao Can, and Ma Zhou searched for Zhang Feng with a lantern for a long time before they found him. However, when they saw Zhang Feng was already deep in thought. No matter how Qing Chimo and Gao Can called out to him, he wouldn't respond. In the end, they were scared out of their wits and hurried up the mountain to find Sun Simiao. After seeing Zhang Feng's situation, Sun Simiao could only sigh helplessly and say, "It's fine. He's just lost in thought. Just wait for him to wake up." After saying that, Sun Simiao sighed and left. The people from Tonghui Lane slowly gathered around. They wanted to carry Zhang Feng up the mountain, but they were afraid of disturbing him. They could only hurriedly build a shed for him and then light the worm-repelling mugwort powder that Zhang Feng invented around the shed. Only then did everyone sit beside Zhang Feng and wait quietly. Gao Ken was an impatient person. After following Zhang Feng, this was the first time someone had taken a good look at him, and he could finally eat his fill. But today, he saw with his own eyes that it was that damned guy on the white horse who caused Zhang Feng to become like this. Gao Can's eyes were red as he held a torch and crazily searched for Li Qingxian in the crowd. In the end, he found Li Qingxian at the entrance of the valley where the pigs were kept. At this time, Li Qingxian seemed to be talking to Du Go and the others. There were also Jin Wu guards standing quietly around them. When they saw Gao Can, no one paid attention to this big blockhead. But when they saw the stick he was holding up, they were instantly frightened. All the Jin Wu guards took action and pressed Gao Can to the ground. However, the Jin Wu guards also paid the price of at least 3 people being seriously injured and more than 10 people being lightly injured. "Bastard, what did you do to Master?" After Gao Can was pressed to the ground and tied up, he roared with a hoarse voice. Li Qingxian's face was also ugly, but when he saw Gao Can's appearance, he also exploded with anger. "Men, drag him down and behead him." Du Go heard this and quickly blocked Li Qingxian. "Are you crazy? You were in the wrong in the first place. Now that something has happened to Feng Zi, none of us will be able to escape. Moreover, have you ever thought about how you're going to explain this to your father? With your actions, the reputation of the White Deer Institute has been completely destroyed. If you continue to kill, I didn't do it on purpose. Moreover, Feng Zi said that I should drive the pigs up the mountain." Li Qingxian was also very irritated. If he didn't listen to Zhang Feng's words, how would he dare to drive the pigs up the mountain so openly? Now that he messed up, everyone was blaming him. He was wronged. Then why didn't you avoid the time? Even if you brought the pigs up at night, it would have been fine. Aren't you worried about the reputation of the college at all? And your reputation? Zhang Sun was also a little angry. He waved his hand and had everyone release Gao Kansas. He asked, "Where's Feng Zi? Call him over and let him come over. We'll discuss how to deal with this matter." It would have been better if Zhang Sun didn't say this. Once he did, Gao Can instantly exploded. "Sir, it's already, Dr. Sun came just now. He couldn't be saved and left." Sir's neighbors covered him with branches and lit a fire around him. What? When everyone heard this, they were almost scared to death. They hurriedly asked Gao Kansas. When they looked in the direction Gao Can pointed, their eyelids twitched. All they saw was a sea of fire. Could it be that Feng Zi, something happened? Li Qingxian was also dumbfounded. Ching Chumo and the others' faces darkened. He grabbed Li Qingxian's collar and roared, "Li Qingxian, you bastard! Lao Tzu, let's see who can save you this time. Let's go and take a look. If something happens to Feng Zi, none of us can escape." Chapter 703. How could they care so much? They hurriedly ran towards the direction of the fire. At this time, Li Qingxian was also scared silly. Wasn't it just chasing a pig down the mountain? It didn't have to be like this. Could it be that there was something wrong with this kid? Li Qingxian also couldn't care so much. He was also scared silly by this situation. He wanted to ask Gao Kansas. But when he thought of this kid's strength and that big guy, he couldn't help but ask hesitantly, "Let me ask you, what's wrong with Feng Zi? What happened to him?" Gao Kan didn't answer him. Instead, he glared at him even more angrily, as if he was going to pounce on him in the next second. Li Qingxian was so scared that he hurriedly shut his mouth. He didn't care so much and hurriedly ran towards the place where the fire filled the sky. The call wasn't far from where Zhang Feng was. There was only a ridge in the middle. The few of them didn't care about the branches on the ground. They held torches and stumbled down the mountain. The closer they got, the more they felt that something was wrong. They could faintly see many of their companions. Under the illumination of the fire, many people were quietly sitting cross-legged on the ground, staring blankly at the haystack in the middle of the countless bonfires. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that this kid was really so easily frightened? Gone. When they thought of this, their hair instantly stood on end. They hurriedly ran down the mountain as if their lives depended on it. When they hurried down the mountain, they realized that almost everyone who had gone up the mountain had come down. Everyone's face was cold and sorrowful. It was indescribable. The few of them also turned pale with fright and hurriedly squeezed to the front. At this time, the old village chief, Ma Zhou, Old He and the others who were walking at the front had sorrowful faces. However, no one cried. Instead, the women and children were crying. Old village chief, this Feng Zi, Li Qingxian wanted to ask, what happened to Zhang Feng? But before he could finish, he was coldly interrupted by the old village chief. Scram. He only gave him one word. But in this word, Li Qingxian actually didn't hear a trace of anger, nor was it interesting. It was a different kind of emotion. It was very cold, so cold that Li Qingxian suddenly felt that he had done something wrong. It also made Li Qingxian, Ching Chumo, Zhang Sun and the others suddenly feel that this matter was really serious. No, old village chief, you should tell us what happened to Feng Zi. Even if we were wrong, you should first tell us what happened to him. What did Dr. Sun say? Judging from Feng Zi's usual condition, he shouldn't be so weak. He saw that it was Du Go who was asking. The old village chief seemed to feel guilty because he beat him up for no reason last time. He sighed and said, I don't know what to say about Feng Zi's situation. It was as if he suddenly became stupid. He sat there quietly without blinking. Even when Dr. Sun came to see him, he only shook his head and sighed. He told us not to disturb him. We were worried that something would happen to Feng Zi, so we gave him this thing. Hearing this, Li Qingxian and the others let out a deep sigh of relief. However, they were also curious. This brat, what are you doing here? This isn't a temple. You're too awesome. However, how could they not know that Zhang Feng was worried about this matter? After all, this matter was too big. If it wasn't handled properly, not only would everything White Deer College be destroyed, but Zhang Feng would also have to face the condemnation of the Shandong aristocratic families and Imperial College. Even though all of the pigs had been brought out, it was undoubtedly one disaster after another for White Deer Academy. AI. You really did something stupid this time. A few people patted Li Qingxian's shoulder and sighed. Then, they silently sat at the side and waited. None of them knew what happened to Zhang Feng, but the best way to deal with this matter was to wait. Zhang Feng's situation was very similar to hysteria, but Dr. Sun didn't mention it. Seeing Zhang Feng's current situation, it meant that Feng Zi's current situation wasn't like that. However, it was precisely because of this that everyone was even more worried. However, although they were worried, they could only silently pray that nothing happened to Zhang Feng. After all, they had interacted with Zhang Feng for so long. In their hearts, Zhang Feng was already their brother. It could even be said that in their hearts, Zhang Feng was already their teacher. However, due to the issue of face, they didn't really call Zhang Feng out. However, just as everyone was sitting around the bonfire waiting for Zhang Feng to wake up, Tai Chi received news that something had happened to Zhang Feng. Li Shimin was already asleep, but after receiving the report from the elite guard stationed at the foot of Kuei Mountain, he was abnormally furious. After that, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others were hastily summoned by Li Shimin in the middle of the night. In Li Shimin's bedroom, Li Shimin said with a frosty expression, "I just received news that something has happened to White Deer College. Do you all know about it?" The few of them fell silent and bowed even lower. When Li Shimin saw this, he waved his sleeve and said angrily, "Change your clothes and follow me to White Deer College." Chapter 704. In the end, Li Shimin did not leave the palace. Leaving the palace in the middle of the night would bring a lot of unnecessary trouble. Li Shimin, Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin, and Qin Xiong waited anxiously in the imperial study all night. When the sky was slightly brighter, Li Shimin hurriedly waved his sleeve and everyone rushed out of the city. At this moment, Zhang Feng's motionless body trembled slightly. Then, under everyone's bloodshot eyes, Zhang Feng moved slightly. His somewhat numb arm and neck stretched. But after seeing the situation clearly, Zhang Feng was somewhat stunned. What, why am I here? What happened to all of you? Why are all of you sitting here? It's not even dawn yet. What's going on? Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded. He had been busy the entire afternoon yesterday. He only remembered that in the end, he had chased the pigs into the pigsty. He couldn't remember what had happened after that. But Zhang Feng looked around his current situation and the hastily built shack around him. He couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "Did I just sit like this the entire night?" Until now. Only then did everyone slowly wake up from their shock and numbness. Feng Zi is back, Feng Zi is awake. Everyone, wake up, Feng Zi is fine, Feng Zi is fine. God bless, it's really the God bless, Feng Zi is finally fine. Everyone, get up, make way for Feng Zi. At this moment, everyone saw that Zhang Feng had woken up and couldn't help but cry bitterly. This made Zhang Feng even more confused. Wasn't it just sleeping? Wasn't it just sitting here and sleeping? Did they have to do this? But he didn't notice that his situation last night, if a normal person saw a person sitting there, staring blankly ahead without blinking for an entire night, they would be scared to death. Zhang Feng was speechless when he saw that everyone was just crying. He also had a headache. There were already a lot of things to do. Now that there was the matter of the pig, Zhang Feng's mind was in a mess. He could not help but shout anxiously, "Do you all have nothing to do? It's already morning, why aren't you going to work? I'll give you a quarter of an hour. Either you get to work, or none of you can eat today." Speaking of which, it was strange. If it was any other day, Zhang Feng's words would have caused many of these people to find Zhang Feng and spout nonsense. But today, it was indeed strange. After hearing Zhang Feng's words, these people laughed with tears flowing down their faces. Now, Feng Zi is back. Our Feng Zi is really back. Let's go. Let's go to work. Otherwise, we will do as Feng Zi said today. No one can eat. Let's go. Let's get to work. Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded by these people's godly actions. However, Zhang Feng thought about it carefully and understood their actions. He was now the dean of White Deer College. These people could be considered as part of White Deer College. They were bound together for good or ill. Looking at it from another perspective, if he was one of these people, and if his dean was sitting here, he would do the same. After all, this was the place where the emperor's orders were placed. If something happened to the dean, it would be equivalent to defying the emperor's orders. Once this matter was carried out, these people would bear joint and several responsibility. However, this was secondary. People in ancient times valued relationships. If you gave them a piece of buckwheat flour bun when they were hungry, they would repay you for the rest of their lives. This kind of relationship was rarely seen in Zhang Feng's previous life. However, during his time in the Great Hall, he had seen these people. It was also called loyalty. This was what made Zhang Feng feel incomparably precious. The people were simple and honest. Compared to the scheming of his previous life, they had an additional layer of sincerity. After everyone left, only Li Qingxian and the others were left. Zhang Feng grimaced in pain and glared at them. "Come in and help me up. My legs are numb." Everyone was stunned for a moment before they reacted. They hurriedly carried Zhang Feng out and placed him on a large bluestone. They patted his legs and massaged his waist. Qing Chumo even used all his strength to massage Zhang Feng's shoulders. It was so painful that Zhang Feng felt as though his neck was about to break. Fortunately, Du Go and Li Qingxian's methods were relatively gentle. After a while, his blood started to flow again. His legs, which were so numb that they no longer felt like a part of his body, slowly regained feeling. However, as he watched the sun rise, a hint of excitement flashed across Zhang Feng's face. "Brothers, do you know that we're rich?" Zhang Feng's inexplicable words caused black lines to flash across the foreheads of the few people present. Zhang Sun even subconsciously touched Zhang Feng's forehead. After confirming that Zhang Feng was still alive, he carefully asked, "Feng Zi, you were too freaking scary last night. Don't tell me you don't know anything about what happened last night? We thought you had done that." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and shook his head speechlessly. Zhang Sun smacked his lips and gave him a thumbs up. "You're awesome. I admire you. I'm in awe." Chapter 705. Li Qingxian said after confirming that Zhang Feng was fine. "Feng Zi, I was in the wrong yesterday and I apologize to you. However, you should know that I really can't do anything about these pigs at the foot of the mountain. Seeing so many die every day is as painful as being stabbed in my heart. You should know that hundreds of pigs are lost every day. If they were in your hands, they would be able to feed hundreds or thousands of people at least. That can at least feed hundreds or thousands of people. But in my hands, if this thing dies, it can only be buried in the ground. So, my heart ached, and in the end, I could only rush it up the mountain for you. Alright, it's not your fault. It's also my fault. I didn't make myself clear. However, since you've already rushed over, to be honest, even though there's a small problem temporarily, I realize that this has created a business opportunity for our White Deer College. It's also a chance to spread the name of our White Deer College." Li Qingxian couldn't wrap his head around it. They seriously suspected that Zhang Feng's brain had gone haywire because of what happened last night. Why did he see everything as a business opportunity? If not, it was about getting rich. Was this something a normal person, a normal college dean would think about? However, they also knew the awkwardness of being estranged. They had to rely on those people to donate food to the mountain. The original 30,000 dan of food had basically been used up by now. If they couldn't think of a way to get more food, it would probably take less than a month. When the college opened, they would be starving. Therefore, earning money and fame was what the college needed the most right now. After confirming that Zhang Feng was really fine, everyone let go of their worries and gathered together. Li Qingxian finally let go of the grudge in his heart and asked, "You said you're going to get rich. You've said this many times. You even told me 3 days ago. No, 4 days ago, you even told me this. However, I'm very puzzled now. Since yesterday, when you saw these pigs, you decided to build this thing here." Li Qingxian spoke very straightforwardly. He stood beside the strangely shaped shed and said, "What exactly is this thing for? Don't tell me you want to slaughter all of these 150,000 pigs here." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but stare at Zhang Feng with wide eyes. Zhang Feng nodded, but then shook his head. This couldn't help but make her even cuter than a few years ago. She was nodding and shaking her head. What was the meaning of this? If it's 150,000 pigs, I did have the thought of slaughtering all of them yesterday. After all, this matter is too big. If I don't take out something, then our White Deer College's reputation might really be ruined. Fortunately, after thinking about it for an entire night, I really did think of a solution. Thinking about it all night? Big brother, did you think about it the entire night? You scared me to death that night, okay? You slept so well last night. Do you know which one of us on the mountain is unbearable? They're all staring at you with their eyes wide open. The few of them rolled their eyes. However, this wasn't important. After all, the most important thing right now was to solve this huge problem. After all, these things ate more than humans every day. If they didn't solve this problem in a day, in less than 3 days, all the food on the mountain would be eaten by these damned pigs. At that time, everyone would starve. Ching Chumo looked at Zhang Feng with shining eyes and asked, "What good idea do you have? Don't tell me you want to open a big restaurant here? If that's the case, I promise I'll bring 300 to 500 brothers here before noon today." Zhang Feng glared at Ching Chumo. "If you want to eat, then eat. Why do you have to bring your brothers into this? At most, you can bring all your family members here for a meal. That's easy, but you'll have to pay. You know that I'm in desperate need of money, but it's best to use food to exchange. 1 caddy of food for 1 caddy of meat." After seeing Chu Mo's murderous gaze, Zhang Feng hurriedly changed his words. "Yes, I'm talking about braised meat, not raw meat." When the others heard this, they all expressed that they could bring many people here today to see the world. However, this was all a joke. After all, everyone knew that they were deep in the mountains. Even if there were so many people, where would they sit? Moreover, they wouldn't be at ease with the people they could bring. If 1 or 2 of them had a big mouth and revealed their identity, then wouldn't they be finished? The most important thing was that they weren't at ease. Therefore, they could only treat this matter as a joke. After laughing for a while, Dugo's words instantly brought them back to the problem of reality. "There are so many pigs, what do we do?" Zhang Feng also put away his cheeky smile. However, the mischievous smile just now was just a forced act for these guys and everyone who was observing him while working. When the topic returned to the main topic, Zhang Feng pondered for a long time before saying, "Iron Bull's idea is actually a way, but it doesn't have to be here." "Where is it then? Do you really want to open a restaurant?" everyone asked in unison. Even those who were eavesdropping on Zhang Feng's painting of Tong Huifang couldn't help pricking up their ears and looking at Zhang Feng. "Yes, it's a restaurant, a restaurant." Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Do you remember why I didn't recommend opening a restaurant after the beer and barbecue was introduced?" He knew that these people didn't understand. Without waiting for them to answer, Zhang Feng continued, "Barbecue and beer are small tricks that can't be used in a restaurant. However, you have all tasted the dishes I made. How do you think my dishes compare to the top restaurants in Chang'an City? There's nothing to be said about it. You don't know, but ever since that fat chef surnamed Zhou learned from you for a period of time, my Li family's kitchen has basically become a place for those bastards to secretly learn from. Originally, my family's kitchen could only accommodate a few people, but now, it's been moved to the courtyard. Every time I cook, it's like I'm opening an Arabian restaurant. Dozens to hundreds of people stare at that guy surnamed Zhou and learn from him. You don't know, but that fatty surnamed Zhou is now as awesome as an ox." Li Qingxian took the opportunity to complain, but when he saw the unfriendly faces of Chen Chumo and the others, he hurriedly changed his words and said, "Let's get down to business. Actually, Fengzi, you don't have to trouble yourself. Before I came to White Deer College, I already ordered my servants to vacate the shops in the downtown areas of Chang'an City. If you want, they can be turned into restaurants in an instant." When Zhang Feng heard this, his expression changed instantly. "So everything you did was a trap set up for me?" Chapter 706. However, when Zhang Feng said that, the expressions of Ching Chimo and the others changed slightly. I say, Feng Zi, are you looking down on your brother? If you're going to do something like this, you should at least give us a heads up first. We have some businesses in Cheng and City. If you and Li Gan are eating meat, you should at least let us have some soup, right? They were aware of Zhang Feng's culinary skills, and they knew that he was preparing to open a restaurant. Everything else aside, the pig head meat and Zhang Feng's culinary skills were enough to make a fortune. How could they remain calm at this moment? However, Zhang Feng did not care. I thought you guys only knew how to play. Who knew that you guys have businesses? When Ching Chimo heard that, he flipped his hair and said, although we are stubborn, we have never asked our parents for a penny. We spend the money we earn. After Ching Chimo finished speaking, Wei Shuyu and the others nodded. Zhang Feng looked at Dugo suspiciously. Dugo's face turned red. How can I be convinced by the stench of money? TSK. Zhang Feng gave him the middle finger in disdain. If you guys want to do it, hurry up. The braised meat will enter Cheng and City tomorrow morning. However, when the time comes, I will need you guys to lead the way. Also, didn't Li Gan say that Fatty Zhou is doing well in your house? Let him and the people he taught stay in your shop for the time being. After 10 days, when I have trained a batch of cooks, they can leave. Of course, you can tell him that if he wants to learn real skills, he can go up the mountain. I will teach him for a month. Li Qingxian nodded. Oh, right. Is your shop big? In the end, Zhang Feng asked casually. Li Qingxian looked around and thought for a while before saying, it is about the same size as your pub. However, it is empty for now. If we do it now, it will probably be ready by tomorrow morning. How should we do the signboard? We need a signboard, right? Something like Yan Lai Restaurant. When it came to signboards, Zhang Feng's first thought was Cheng and restaurant. However, after thinking about it, he did not want it to be too shocking. However, he could not think of a common name. He could only lie on the big green rock and bathe in the morning sun. He said, you guys think of a name for the restaurant. I am having a headache now. When they heard that, they gathered together. What do you think of calling our store Hongbin Restaurant? It doesn't sound good, it doesn't sound domineering, and it doesn't reflect how different it is from the masses. I think it should be called the White Deer Winery. Only then would it reflect the name of our White Deer Academy, right? No, Bailu. Although the name of the academy is unique and elegant, how can it be the name of a restaurant? How about calling it Room Restaurant? No. Why don't we use the first word of our names to think of a name for each of our restaurants? This. I think it will work. They squatted on the ground and debated for a long time. When Zhang Feng was about to fall asleep, they excitedly shook Zhang Feng awake. Seeing that Zhang Feng had woken up, Li Qingxian was the first to say, we have thought of a name. How about Good Again? Good Again? How did I hear the smell of a roadside stall? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. He shook his head speechlessly. In any case, you're all reputable figures. What the hell are you thinking of when you think of a name? Can't you guys think of a proper one? Li Qingxian spread his hands. We have been thinking about this for 2 hours. The key is that this silly guy doesn't sound good. That's why we came up with this name. Why don't you come up with it? I am going to die from anger if I have to deal with these guys. Li Qingxian immediately stopped being a handsome guy. Trying to reason with Ching Chimo and the other two. It would be more practical to fight with them. Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, since you guys can't think of a name, then I have an idea. Listen to me. The few of them were instantly energized. They climbed up the big green rock and leaned against it to wait. Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, this can be considered the first chain business of White Deer College in Cheng and City. This is actually a way to explore the market and also to build a reputation for our college. Therefore, I think we should call it the Cheng and Hotel chain. We will arrange the branches in order. For example, Li Qingxian's 20 stores will be called the Chang and Hotel Chain No. 1 store, White Deer College store. The second store will be called the Chang and Hotel Chain No. 2 store, White Deer College store. What do you think? What kind of name is this? Li Qingxian and the others stared at Zhang Feng with their mouths agape. If this name was hung on the signboard, wouldn't it make people laugh their heads off? This name was even worse than the previous one. Wasn't this a little too much? Li Qingxian's face was a little stiff. His stores were basically known to all the high-ranking officials and dignitaries in Chang'an City. If they suddenly changed the signboard to this name, how would he dare to go out in the future? This was a signboard? Which store had this name on their signboard? Chapter 707. However, it was clear that Li Qingxian and the others could not win against Zhang Feng's stubbornness. Under Zhang Feng's strong suggestion, Li Qingxian could only pinch his nose and accept it. There was no other way. The arm could not win against the thigh. After the few of them saw Zhang Tufu leading about 100 or so pig slaughterers valiantly rushing to the battlefield, they could no longer sit still and hurriedly went down the mountain. Just as the few of them had just gone down the mountain, Zhang Feng returned to the wooden house at the top of the mountain and was about to have a good sleep. He heard something that he did not want to hear at all. Yu Shinan had gone up the mountain. Moreover, he had gone up the mountain in a rage last night and was currently in Dr. Sun's courtyard. Dr. Sun's house was temporarily next to Li Yuan's house. Li Yuan was afraid of being lonely, so he pulled Dr. Sun to the side of the waterfall, listening to the sound of the water and the shouts of the construction site. He even built a wooden house for Sun Simiao while he was at it. However, Li Yuan was unable to withstand the choking smell of the lime kiln and ran away. Only Sun Simiao was left to live there alone. This time, Li Yuan's empty house was coincidentally occupied by Yu Shinan. When Zhang Feng learned of this matter, he sighed and could only hurriedly rush to Yu Shinan's place and wait to be reprimanded. There was no other way, he was under someone else's roof and had to lower his head. After all, he still had to invite Yu Shinan and rely on Yu Shinan's relationship to invite those three great gods up the mountain. When Zhang Feng arrived with 3 jars of fine wine and 3 charred earth mounds, Yu Shinan and Sun Simiao both looked at the boiling tea stove and burst into hearty laughter from time to time. They did not look as angry as Go Zi had said. Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little confused. However, he didn't dare to be careless. He put the things on the door and bowed. Student Zhang Feng greets Mr. Bo Shi. However, Yu Shinan acted as if he didn't hear anything. He continued to chat with Sun Simiao and Sun Simiao about things that even Zhang Feng found boring. He laughed until his beard trembled. Zhang Feng wondered if the two of them would just leave if they continued laughing. However, this scene finally stopped when Zhang Feng spoke for the 3rd time. Yu Shinan glanced at Zhang Feng. Instantly, the smile on his face disappeared. With a straight face, he pointed at the opposite side of the table and said, "Sit." Zhang Feng felt as if he had been granted amnesty. He nodded and bowed as he sat down. There was nothing he could do about it. Although this was his territory, he still needed help from others, so he had to lower himself a little. Moreover, this matter was caused by them. Since Yu Shinan was here, it meant that there was still room for negotiation. As soon as Zhang Feng sat down, he hurriedly put the 3 beggars' chickens on the table and then opened the mud seal on the wine jars. Sure enough, no matter how honest and upright Yu Shinan was, he still lowered his arrogant head under the temptation of fine wine and delicious food. "I didn't know that Mr. Bo Shi came up the mountain last night. I didn't serve you well. These 3 jars of fine wine are the last 3 jars of fine wine left here. I specially present them to you as an apology. Please calm down, Mr. Bo Shi. Boy, you seem to owe me 3 days of wine." Looking at the wine, Sun Simiao was also greedy and took advantage of the situation. Zhang Feng's expression froze for a moment before he hurriedly said, "Dr. Sun is right. I've always kept that in mind. Unfortunately, after I got drunk that night, I drank all the wine. This is my mistake. In half a month's time, when the new wine comes out of the cellar, I'll definitely give Dr. Sun the first batch of good wine." Hearing this, Sun Simiao grabbed a jar and filled it with 30,000 wine for the three of them. He had forgiven Zhang Feng. But Yu Shinan wasn't willing to buy Sun Simiao's excuse. He coldly snorted and said, "Don't try to bribe this old man with such mundane things. Kid, let me ask you, yesterday's matter of 300,000 pigs coming up the mountain, was it you who instigated it?" Sir, you are wise. It was my idea." Sun Simiao glanced at Zhang Feng and sighed. Hearing this, Yu Shinan could not help but get angry. "Do you know where this place is?" Zhang Feng hurriedly sat up straight and said, "I know. This is White Deer College. Since you know about such a thing, how can you openly rush up the mountain? If the scholars of the world knew about this, wouldn't they think that this deserted mountain is actually a place for pigs to be raised? What is this? This is an insult to the sages. Have you read the sages' books all the way down to your toes? Don't you understand this? Have you ever thought about us? Have you ever thought about Dr. Sun's reputation?" The more Yu Shinan spoke, the angrier he got. In the end, he was almost shouting. Of course, he would do the same. This time, he had just announced his retirement from writing in a high-profile manner. Then, he learned from the Emperor Emeritus that Zhang Feng had read out a few poems on Shao Mountain a few nights ago. Just when he was inexplicably excited, this boy directly poured a piss on him. Yu Shinan instantly felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, it would be strange if he did not get angry. Zhang Feng also knew that he was rash. He could only obediently endure Yu Shinan's anger. When Yu Shinan's mood was slightly better, he said, "Mr. Bo sure is right. I was indeed muddle-headed back then. Of all the things I should not have done, I should not have let that bastard Li Gan do this. However, I have a different opinion about the impact this matter will have on White Deer College." Chapter 708. Sun Simiao was shocked. He quickly stopped Zhang Feng and said, "Kid, hurry up and apologize to Brother Bashi. Maybe Brother Bashi can." Fine. Brother Sun, just let this kid speak. Old man wants to see how he's going to argue." Sun Simiao wanted to find another way out. But at this moment, Yu Shinan was truly enraged. He stopped drinking and looked at the waterfall not far away with his hands behind his back. Zhang Feng gave Sun Simiao a fist salute helplessly. How could he not know that Sun Simiao was trying to find a way out for him? But if this matter was not explained clearly, it would be troublesome later. Moreover, Chang'an City would be abuzz by now. If he did not explain clearly, Yu Shinan might not even come, let alone Chu Suiliang and the other two. Then, he would be exhausted to death if he was the only one in this huge academy. Seeing this, Zhang Feng sorted out what he wanted to say in his mind. Then, he said, "Mr. Bashi, please calm down. The reason why the student union did this was because they were concerned about the academy's reputation." "Humph. You're still concerned about the academy's reputation? Old man's reputation has been ruined because of your 300,000 pigs. You're still concerned about your academy? I'm afraid that in less than 3 days, everyone in your academy will leave." Yu Shinan didn't even turn his head as he responded. Sun Simiao hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Brother Bashi, he's still a kid. Calm down and listen to what he has to say, okay? Old man asked this kid last night, and old man also learned from Li Gan. Zhang Feng brought 300,000 pigs here because he wanted to improve the breed of the pigs and get rid of the foul smell, making them more delicious. You weren't on the mountain these days. Zhang Feng used 13 kinds of Chinese medicine to make the pork. Old man thought that he had eaten all kinds of delicacies, but this pork still made old man drool. Speaking of which, why didn't you bring any braised pork trotters today?" Zhang Feng slapped his head. "Look at me. I was so busy at the foot of the mountain that I forgot. I'll send someone to bring it to you later." As he spoke, Zhang Feng was about to get up to look for someone. But he was stopped by Yu Shinan. "You can't win and you want to run away?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he retracted his foot that had just stepped out. He knew what Sun Simiao meant. That meant that no matter how much you said, it was not as practical as a braised pig trotter. Zhang Feng also understood. But how could the two of them be able to hide from Yu Shernan's ears? Zhang Feng was speechless. He could only stand where he was and say, "Actually, as Old Man Sun said, I did come up with some Chinese medicine to get rid of the smell of the pork. After I got the confirmation, I asked Li Qian to go down the mountain and find a large number of eunuchs from the cleansing room to castrate the pigs." Zhang Feng told him about the process of rotting the pigs, how to get rid of the foul smell, and how he had Sun Simiao prepare the feed so that the pigs could grow to 200 catties in half a year at most. Moreover, the pigs would not have a foul smell on them at all. Although Yu Shernan was shocked and asked Sun Simiao again and again, he still couldn't believe it. However, after glancing at Zhang Feng, Yu Shernan's anger flared up again. "I'll believe you for now. But after all, it's just flattery and can't be taken out. Is your academy only good at teaching people how to raise pigs?" Although Yu Shernan was still rude, Zhang Feng could tell from Yu Shernan's voice that Yu Shernan's anger had subsided. He was just waiting for an explanation. Zhang Feng said hurriedly, "We students learn the Tao of Confucius, and he taught us to take from the people and use for the people. He also taught us not to forget the people and fire." Did Confucius say this? Yu Shernan frowned slightly. Although Yu Shernan had never heard of these words, they seemed to make some sense. Yu Shernan turned around and sat back at the table to ask. How could Zhang Feng know who was the one who said all this? It was just a slip of the tongue. I don't remember which sage said it, but these words must have come from the sage. But I think that we were born to eat the 5 grains and understand the ways of the world. Almost none of us grew up slowly from the daily necessities, and then studied. What is the purpose of this? Yes. We want to serve the court better, change our lives, change the lives of the people, and let everyone have good food, clothes, and laughter at home. What do you think, Mr. Bosher? This was another piece of information that was put together. Although Yu Shernan was thinking hard, he still nodded. Don't change the topic. Tell me about your current situation. Okay. Hearing this, Zhang Feng immediately sat down obediently and said, regarding this matter, Li Gan misunderstood what I meant. However, I did not blame him. If I had not said those words, Li Gan would not have been so agitated that he did not even know the time and hurriedly drove the pigs up the mountain. He didn't do anything wrong, and I think I didn't do anything wrong either. Chapter 709. Yu Shernan was so angry that he laughed. Sun Simiao hurriedly signaled to Zhang Feng with his eyes. However, Yu Shernan stopped Sun Simiao and said, "Continue." Zhang Feng then said, "Let's not talk about the past. Let's talk about this year. The Longyu province of the Tang dynasty suffered from a drought. Let's not talk about this. Old man knows that you want to show off your achievements again, right?" Zhang Feng was stunned. Then, he picked up the most recent topic and said, "Ever since we reached an agreement with Tubo forgot about the basics in order to obtain more food to fight against the plague of locusts. Therefore, I asked Lao Li and the others to take the opportunity to gather a large number of pigs to eliminate the locusts. Fortunately, the heavens took pity on us. In the end, the locusts were eliminated. However, the first thing that happened after the locusts were eliminated was the outbreak of famine." Yu Shernan frowned in dissatisfaction. Zhang Feng hurriedly fast-forwarded again and said, "These pigs require a large amount of food every day. If we leave them to their own devices, if Tufan finds out and takes the opportunity to ask for the pigs, wouldn't that put Old Li and the others in danger? We can't let the pigs go and can't afford to raise them. After all, people nowadays can barely afford to eat 1 meal a day. Where would we find the money to spare for rice? That's why this kid is so impatient. He only went up Mount E. When he was supervising the construction of White Deer College, he sent someone to find old Gao to experiment on the mountain first. The godly doctor knows about this." Yu Shernan nodded and his anger subsided a little. "I already know about this. Old man has seen old Gao before. But what does the 300,000 pigs at the foot of the mountain have to do with this matter? Have you thought about it?" "I have." Zhang Feng picked up the wine bowl and drank it. He sighed and said, on the one hand, I was worried about the people all day long. I was hungry all day long. I couldn't sleep at night and didn't know how to eat. Fortunately, I found a solution in my dream. I developed a braising material made from 13 herbs. It temporarily removed the smell of pork and made it delicious. It's just that you don't know that there are so many pigs outside Chang'an City that are troubling Lao Li. Lao Li and I are brothers. When my brothers are in trouble, how can I stand by and watch? That's why I came up with this bold idea. After Zhang Feng finished speaking, he gently opened the beggar's chicken. At this time, he was sure that Yu Shinan and Li Mu hadn't eaten yet. Therefore, when the mud wrapped around the beggar's chicken was knocked open, the fragrance instantly attracted the two of them. Yu Shinan's Adam's apple involuntarily moved. Zhang Feng slowly peeled off the layers of lotus leaves, then took out a small knife from his bosom and cut open the chicken's stomach. The spices wrapped in the chicken's stomach, as well as the steaming hot eggs, instantly rolled all over the table. Zhang Feng pointed to the beggar's chicken and said, "This is the way I came up with to solve the problem of the chickens and ducks starving to death because of lack of food every day. That's eating. This method is simple. It doesn't need a stove. You can learn how to cook just by looking at it once." While Zhang Feng was talking, Yu Shinan and Sun Simiao had already picked up a chicken thigh and gnawed at it. Seeing this, Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. Then he slowly said, "As for the 300,000 pigs, when I learned from Li Gan that more than 100 of them starved to death every day, I couldn't help but feel distressed. So many people in Chang'an are starving, but pork is a natural food. Wouldn't it be a pity if we just let it be wasted and no one knew how to eat it? So I planned to build a food processing factory at the foot of the mountain. Every day, I would let the people who learned how to braise meat in Tonghui Square continuously braise the pork. Then, would send people to deliver it to Chang'an City for everyone to eat." Zhang Feng explained his plan in detail. At this point, Yu Shinan finally asked in shock, "Your original intention wasn't to save the ordinary people of Chang'an, right?" Although I haven't eaten it before, from old Sun's slanderous look when he heard about the braised pork, I knew that it wasn't a common thing. Tell me what you think. At this point, Yu Shinan's anger finally disappeared completely. Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. However, he knew that what he was about to say next was the most important thing. If he didn't get to the point, Yu Shinan wouldn't go up the mountain. Even if he had agreed before, he would regret it now. Zhang Feng thought for a while, then raised his wine bowl and respectfully toasted Yu Shinan and Sun Simiao. Then he said, "As I said before, this plan was indeed for the sake of the Academy's reputation. You also know that White Deer College is actually a hodgepodge. Those who don't know won't be able to accept such a model. Although I don't force everyone to come, Zhang Feng, also want to fight for my reputation and let everyone see White Deer College. So..." Yu Shinan threw away the chicken bones and picked through them. He took the small machete from Zhang Feng's hands and cut the chicken breast meat. He held it in his hands and ate it as he asked this question. "I want to pry the food out of the mouths of those dukes and officials in Chang'an." Chapter 710. Zhang Feng said very calmly, as if this was how it should be. But when these words came out, instantly, Yu Shinan and Sun Simiao's faces changed. They hurriedly looked around. After making sure that no one was around, they heaved a sigh of relief. Yu Shinan looked at Zhang Feng for a long time with a dignified face. Then he said, "Boy, do you know that if what you said today is known by others, even if you have 10 heads, they won't be enough to chop off your head? Do you understand? In the future, don't say such things. Old man doesn't want his reputation to be ruined by your hands." Sun Simiao couldn't help but sigh. "Boy, your idea is right, but pork is pork after all. It can't be put on the table. What's more, who doesn't know the value of food at this time? No matter how fragrant your braised meat is, this old man feels that no one will pay for your impulsiveness." Zhang Feng shook his head. "No, since this boy dares to do this, he has already thought about everything. Last night, this boy thought about it all night. Yes. Sun Simiao was surprised. You had hysteria last night because of this? Zhang Feng nodded. You're right. Without that diamond drill, this boy wouldn't dare to take on this porcelain job. Until now, the matter had finally come to an end. But let alone you, Shernan, even Sun Simiao felt that it was impossible. Your idea is perfect, but in reality, do you intend to deal with this matter with the jealousy of all the people? If you do so, then old man will go down the mountain now. From now on, he will have nothing to do with you and Shao Mountain. Yu Shernan said simply and directly. Zhang Feng heard this and laughed. If this boy is like this, then he really wants to kill himself. Selling pork, in fact, is the same as the cooperative and the bone-strengthening powder. They both need one thing, public opinion. What did you say? Bone-strengthening powder? And the cooperative? Did you come up with all these things? Yu Shernan could no longer sit still. Zhang Feng was also a little surprised. Did old Feng not tell Mr. Bosher? Yu Shernan rubbed his forehead. What else did you do? Now, let's talk about it. The old man doesn't want to be surprised by you from time to time. Previously, the old man always thought that this magical thing like the bone-strengthening powder was made by Brother Sunday. However, after meeting Brother Sun, the old man knew that this thing wasn't made by him. The old man is still wondering who made this thing. But I never expected it to be you. Alas. Yu Shernan sighed and said, if it weren't for this matter, those 3 stubborn old men probably wouldn't have needed the old man to waste his breath. He would have only needed this bone-strengthening powder to make them rush up the mountain overnight. Yu Shernan wasn't exaggerating. This bone-strengthening powder was so miraculous that even he was surprised. After taking it, one's whole body would feel comfortable and even their strength would be stronger than before. Moreover, what was the cooperative? This was a benefit to the people. He didn't know if there were any descendants, but no one in the past could have done such a feat. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. However, the pig matter has too much influence. Maybe Guanlong is already thinking of a way. Even the people of the Shandong nobles know about this matter. If you have any ideas, hurry up and say it. The old man will let you see if it will work or not. Hearing this, Zhang Feng asked the 2 to eat the chicken. Then, he hurried to a group of craftsmen who just passed by not far away and said something. Then, he came back and ate and drank with the 2. While eating and drinking, Zhang Feng said, Mr. Bosher, my real purpose this time is to use the fragrance of this pork to make those dignitaries cry. Then, I will cook it outside Chang'an city and give it to the poor people on the spot. As long as the fragrance floats into the stomach of those people in the city and arouses their appetite, they will want to taste it even if they know it is pork. Yu Shernan curled his lips. However, when he looked at the delicious chicken in his hand, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he laughed and said, then this isn't your original intention, right? As far as the old man knows, you are the kind of person who won't act until you see the hair. Are you willing to give away all this pork? Zhang Feng waved his hand dizzily and said, Mr. Bosher, you must be joking. Although I love money, I get it in a good way. I don't dare to be greedy for such a national disaster. I only have Confucius's teachings in my heart. Of course, at this time, I have a big family and a big business. I need money everywhere on the mountain. After this wave of public opinion blows up, I plan to let Li Gan and the others open restaurants in Chang'an city under the name of White Deer College. I don't want money, and I won't ask for more. I only want a gene of grain in exchange for a gene of braised meat. Yu Shernan couldn't help but frown. Although he understood some things from Zhang Feng's words, he faintly heard the way of merchants. How could this be said by a dean of an academy? This was clearly an unscrupulous merchant. Chapter 7:11. What the literati despised the most was the merchants who were full of evil intentions in the dark. This was also the reason why merchants in this era had such a low status. In everyone's eyes, they were heartless scoundrels who sold high and received low. He was very unwilling to let Zhang Feng do this. After all, Zhang Feng was no longer alone in this matter. Behind him, there was a complicated network of relationships. The emperor. The retired emperor. And the crown prince, the divine doctor, etc. Behind him, the gazes of Guan Long, the landowning clans of Shandong, and so on were all focused on him. If he made even the slightest mistake, it would be like today. Everything he had done today, as well as the reputation he had painstakingly accumulated, would instantly collapse. But fortunately, Yu Shinan was not a stubborn person. When Zhang Feng said that 1 gene of grain could be exchanged for 1 gene of meat, he already understood what Zhang Feng was doing. However, this was what shocked Yu Shinan the most. This guy actually used the strategy of retreating in order to advance in the military book. Just like when the Academy first issued the imperial edict, everyone was full of contempt for him, thinking that he was just a local rich man or a stubborn person who was playing around. But then, when the granary was opened and 20,000 dawn of grain was distributed, what Yu Shinan saw on the mountain was not ordinary. Sometimes, even Yu Shinan had an illusion. If not for Zhang Feng's personality, he would definitely think that Zhang Feng was the reincarnation of a saint. Especially now, when he knew the real purpose of the 300,000 pigs, he deeply felt the horror of Zhang Feng. This guy was not simple. In time, who could be on the same level as him? No one could compare to his courage. Although he was a little timid and afraid of death, a little training was enough. Knowledge, even he could not understand the magical arithmetic at this time, and even those poems that made him feel ashamed of his inferiority. It was also after he decided to go to Shao Mountain that he took the initiative to stop writing. Every time he thought of Zhang Feng's poem, he looked at the pen in his hand and felt a sense of shame. He felt like he was humiliating this pen and this piece of paper. Let's talk about strategy. Just by opening his mouth, this kid was able to toy with the Tubo Turks and other countries. Even if Zhuge Kongming was still alive, he would probably only be able to catch up to him. What happened just now seemed to be a joke. However, as long as Zhang Feng put the pork in the stove outside Chang and city on fire, naturally, any trick would fall apart. People would never be able to deceive their eyes, nose, and ears. Sigh. Boy, this old man is very curious. Who are you? Yu Shinan asked as he finished the last egg in his hand. Zhang Feng shrugged. I don't know. Someone said that I was Kongming's teacher. I also vaguely remember that Kongming seemed to be one of my disciples. This kid had been sitting on Mount Wutai for 500 years, shut up. I'm not full yet. Quickly go and get some pork trotters for the old man to try. This time, the old man doesn't plan to leave. It's a good chance to keep brother Sun company. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was overjoyed. However, Zhang Feng's face turned bitter and he sighed. Aya, this kid is really too excited. I can't express it with words. However, as you can see, there are so many students on the mountain. Moreover, this pork incident has attracted everyone's attention. This kid is worried that Mr. Bosher won't be able to handle it. Yu Shinan wanted to laugh. He waved his hand and said, that's enough. Don't try to show off in front of me. I'll write a letter to those 3 stubborn old fellows. Moreover, it all depends on whether you're able to accomplish what you said. If you're really able to accomplish it, then even if I don't write them a letter, they'll naturally come to White Deer Academy. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was overjoyed and bowed. Then this kid will thank Mr. Bosher in advance. Scram, I'm hungry. Yu Shinan found it funny. In the end, he could only smile speechlessly. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng looked into the distance and pointed at a few people carrying a large dustpan. What a coincidence. You're in luck today. This is the braised pork that was just brought up from the foot of the mountain. This kid even made a whole pig. I'm going to prepare a pig feast for you. Please take a seat. Sun Simiao couldn't wait any longer. Seeing the people carrying the dustpan, he crawled up and took out 3 wine gourds from the wooden house. In the end, he was still worried and shook Zhang Feng's wine jar. I know you can't hold your liquor well, so I didn't prepare anything for you. What could Zhang Feng say? He could only laugh and hurriedly put the steaming hot braised pork on the table with the 4 students. Before he could put everything out, a large pig intestine coiled together in a pot attracted Yushernan's attention. Zhang Feng saw this and said, "This thing is good for the intestines. In other words, it's digestion in the stomach. Right now, the meat is fully cooked. You can try it." Yushernan heard this and hurriedly picked up a long piece of pig intestine. Under Zhang Feng's instructions, he dipped it in some vinegar and sauce and took a small bite. Yushernan couldn't help but let out a moan when he smelled the fragrant, soft, and sticky scent. "Kid, what is this?" "Pig intestine." Chapter 7:12. As soon as Zhang Feng finished his words, Sun Simiao's expression changed instantly. He even stopped chewing his favorite pig trotter and looked at Yushernan instead. Yushernan's expression changed, but in the end, he chewed slowly and looked at Sun Simiao with a smile. Old man even dared to eat the locusts, let alone this? Ha 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 ha. Brother Bashi, you're right. This guy is as timid as a mouse. He would never dare to serve those dirty things on our table. However, don't bring these dirty things to the taverns in Chang'an. If those people get hold of them, you'll be in trouble. Zhang Feng curled his lips. He didn't take it seriously. It was a pity that there were no chili peppers in this era. Now, the chili peppers should still be living well in America. When the steam engine was ready, Lao Tzu would go and get the chili peppers back. Lao Tzu didn't believe that no one would eat a plate of spicy fried pig intestines. This thing, even in the future, was a top-grade delicacy. There were some people who felt disgusted, but that was a small matter. Zhang Feng couldn't be an all-purpose charger. He didn't force everyone to like it. As long as some people could accept this thing, how could his pocket not hold the money of half of them? But this was a story for later. Zhang Feng was afraid that the introduction wasn't good enough, so he moved the whole pig up the mountain and sent it here. However, the 3 people's stomachs were only so big. When they were eating and drinking, the fragrance attracted a group of children working on the mountain. Yushernan waved his hand, and a large group of children gathered around and ate heartily. The 3 people had no choice but to move slowly along the mountain path and walk toward the waterfall, treating it as an exercise after dinner. As they walked, Yushernan picked his teeth and asked, "Fengzi, looking at the construction, the building of the academy will be officially completed in a month, which is around the Mid-Autumn Festival." However, Old Man saw something that he had never seen before. They call it teaching tools. What's going on? When Yushernan went up the mountain yesterday, he happened to meet the old craftsman who was looking for Zhang Feng with the teaching tools. Yushernan asked him about it, but when he looked at the semicircular and triangular teaching tools in his hand, Yushernan couldn't see through them. These tools were engraved with scale marks like the ruler, but they were completely different from what he knew. If it wasn't for the pig's matter, he would have asked him. At this time, the pig's matter was solved, and Yushernan remembered his business. If he didn't want to teach at the academy, he wouldn't care. However, since he decided to stay, Yushernan naturally got into his role. Zhang Feng didn't hide anything and said, "These things are the teaching tools needed for mathematics and the science after mathematics. Mathematics is only a basic science. These things are needed to accurately measure the area of fields and objects. The things we measure now are either measured with a ruler or footprints. It's too troublesome. However, once we learn mathematics, we can calculate these things. For example, the area of my Shao mountain will only take a cup of tea's time." "Is it really so magical?" Yushernan asked. "It's not miraculous. After a few days, when the pork issue dies down, I'll take some time to finalize the teaching book with you. Then, I'll write down the basics of mathematics and how to learn. I'll show them to Mr. Bosher, and Mr. Bosher will naturally know when the time comes." Yushernan and Sun Simiao were instantly shocked. They exclaimed in unison, "You're saying that you're going to write teaching materials?" "Yes." "Is there anything wrong with it?" Zhang Feng asked in surprise when he saw the expressions of the 2. Hearing this, Yushernan and Sun Simiao looked at each other. They suspected that Zhang Feng was drunk. Then, the three of them didn't speak for a long time until they reached the bottom of the waterfall. Looking at the water gushing out from a cave on the cliff, Yu Shinan asked, "Kid, do you know the price of paper?" "Xian paper costs a kilogram." "Then you already know. Do you know how much money it costs to write teaching materials?" "Kid, do you know why there are so few scholars in this era?" He knew that he didn't speak. Yu Shinan pointed at a crooked jujube tree under the waterfall. The three of them sat on the intertwined roots of the tree. Yu Shinan said with a serious expression, "Actually, old man has been wanting to tell you about this for a long time. Do you know why many people don't think highly of White Deer College?" Zhang Feng didn't know about this. He hurriedly said, "Please enlighten me, Mr. Bo." Yu Shinan sighed and said, "You know the requirements to become a great Confucian scholar in this era. The reason why we recommended you was because we saw your talent. But if you want to become a great Confucian scholar with your own ability, you'll need at least 30 years. This doesn't matter what your position is, how famous you are, or how many students you have. What matters is how many books you have. Do you understand?" Chapter 713. Zhang Feng could vaguely understand some of the words. Then he said, "Mr. Bo, sure, you worry too much. I've already collected all kinds of rare books from all over the place. I even got my hands on the ancient literature book." Yu Shinan was surprised. "Are you talking about the book in old Master Li's hands?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. He asked in return, "Are there many copies of the ancient literature book?" Yu Shinan didn't answer him. He just rubbed his forehead and said, "I heard that old Master Li became the honorary vice dean of the academy. Did he exchange a book for it?" Zhang Feng sighed. "Old Master Li is really something. How can he talk about this kind of thing? This isn't a matter of talking nonsense." Yu Shinan was a little annoyed. He pointed at Zhang Feng and said, "You're really a newborn calf that's not afraid of tigers. You should know that the so-called book collection is partly about this matter. It's also about the books you've written. You can even copy the books of your predecessors or translate a book. But, to put it bluntly, an academy is competing on the number of books it has. But it's also the kind of competition. As a dean and a chancellor, you represent an academy. To forge iron, you need to be tough. You haven't been tough. What do you think will happen? So, you should be able to understand what I'm saying, right?" Yu Shinan sighed again after he finished speaking. Sun Simiao thought for a while. He looked at Zhang Feng and Yu Shinan before he said, "Old man, I know you don't understand what Brother Bo Shi is saying. Let me ask you. Do you know that there are many schools in Chang'an City right now?" 3. Imperial College, Chang'an University, and our current White Deer College. Sun Simiao asked. "Then do you think, other than Brother Bo Shi, anyone else in Chang'an City is qualified to open a school?" "Yes." "Then why are not many of them willing to open an academy?" This, Zhang Feng fell silent. At this moment, Yu Shinan slowly uttered 2 words. "Paper is expensive." Although there are many talented people, the reason why they are still so unknown is not because they are not outstanding enough, but because most of the scholars are from poor families. Or perhaps because they are studying and buying books, they have gone bankrupt. Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of something. Unable to restrain his emotions, he said, "Frightened by the public, the Lady Spring overflows, the Three Gorges Ci source flows backward. Paper is expensive in Chang'an. Every word that is passed down is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Cutting a piece of flesh and returning it to his bosom, the teacher will laugh at himself. How can he be honest? But don't ask with a cup in your hand. How can there be such a person in the human world who is like a child growing up poor? Who knows what is in Jeshuan's mind? Like the wind, like a dance. Looking back at the setting sun, vast and boundless, dust and wild horses. Longzhong, crouching dragon 1,000 feet, Gao Yin Kai. Qian, who would ask, Lei Ming, Tian Cauldron, Huang Zhong is mute. I understand. Zhang Feng sucked in a deep breath of cold air. He had always thought that paper was expensive. But when he thought about it from a deeper level, he felt that the scholars of the Tang dynasty were all arrogant because of their talent. But now, Yu Shernan's words instantly woke Zhang Feng up. It was not that these people did not want to teach. It was that they could not afford to teach. A book, no matter what, required 2 or 3 grams of paper. Ordinary yellow paper was not easy to write on. Only expensive rice paper was easy to write on. But how many people could afford rice paper? Finally, he could understand the meaning of Xin Chiji's poem. Paper is expensive in Chang'an, thousands of gold coins fight for it. Cut the meat and return it, the teacher laughs at himself. At this moment, Yu Shernan was also deeply shocked. To think that Zhang Feng was so talented that he was able to understand the logic behind the situation in an instant. He was even able to compose such a poem in an instant. He was simply a genius. Seeing that Zhang Feng was silent at this moment, Yu Shernan thought that his enthusiasm was suppressed by him. He could not bear to say, "Boy, don't be discouraged. As long as you use your 300,000 pigs properly, there is nothing to be afraid of. Teacher, you worry too much. How can I be frightened by such things?" At this moment, Zhang Feng regained his confidence in an instant. He had known that the paper was expensive, but he did not plan to buy it. Moreover, it seemed that old Master Li did not think that he could really make paper, so this matter was not spread out. Fortunately, this was still good. Seeing Zhang Feng's reaction, Yu Shernan could not understand Zhang Feng's shock and was a little unhappy. Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "Sir, I've actually thought of this a few days ago. Moreover, my academy needs paper, especially high-quality paper. In a month, I'll need at least 300 pounds. This is not considered teaching literature. Every student needs at least 3 pounds of paper to make books. Then there are the teachers teaching materials and homework, etc. They all need paper. And you said that this paper costs 1,000 strings of cash per pound. Even if I have a fortune of 10,000 strings of cash, I can't support it. So I have already made preparations." "What preparations?" "Make it yourself." Chapter 7:14. Nonsense. Is this something that you can create even if you want to? This technique of papermaking is either in the hands of the Ministry of Works or in the hands of those papermaking masters. Do you think anyone can make papermaking? If that's the case, it can't be as simple as the sentence in your poem just now. Paper is expensive in Chang'an. A word is passed down. Thousands of gold pieces fight for it. You're laughing at yourself. How is that honest? You know the meaning of it yourself. If it can be made, the phenomenon of paper being expensive in Chang'an would not happen. Yu Shernan felt that Zhang Feng was boasting. Although Zhang Feng's business skills had already shocked the world with his construction skills, papermaking wasn't something that could be mastered so easily. Zhang Feng did not object. He knew how shocking it would be if he were to say it out loud. When Yu Shernan stopped, Zhang Feng said seriously, "Mr. Bo-Shi, I wasn't boasting just now. The phrase, paper is expensive, will soon become a thing of the past. I know that you still think that I'm talking big and don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, I know my own weight. Although Xian paper is good, it also has a drawback. That is, a layer of wax is smeared on the paper. Although it's still okay, it's not easy for ink to penetrate. The penetration power is not good. A book that has been placed for 3 to 5 years has to be copied again. How much money is that? But my paper is different. Paper is less than half the thickness of Xian paper. It's soft and very white, just like snow. The most important thing is the price. I've calculated. Based on the material of 300 caddies of paper, 300 caddies of paper, including the wages of the workers and the price of the raw materials, is less than 100 copper coins. What? This? How is this possible? Yu Shernan finally could not maintain his elegant posture. Why was paper so expensive? It was because it was troublesome to make. Even the biggest papermaking workshop in Chang'an, Pure Heart Workshop, could only produce about 100 caddies of Xian paper in a month with 300 workers working day and night. It was not that the merchants did it on purpose. This workshop belonged to the Ministry of Works. It was too troublesome to refine the materials and boil the pulp. Yu Shinan had once gone to the Ministry of Works and personally stayed at Pure Heart Workshop for a month. Calculating the cost of the workers' wages, the cost of the raw materials, and so on, almost half of the 100 caddies of rice paper was the capital. But even so, the paper produced could not be used. There was a layer of fluff on the paper and it had to be doused with wax to smooth the paper. But what did Zhang Feng say? 300 caddies of paper that was better than Xian paper, only 100 copper coins? How was this possible? At this moment, Sun Sinister Sunday. Feng Zi, you said that your paper is thinner than Xian paper? As he spoke, Sun Simiao took out a book from the sachet on his belt. He picked up a piece of paper and asked, "Look, this is Xian paper. Are you sure it's thinner than Xian paper?" "It's thinner than Xian paper." As Zhang Feng spoke, he looked around and picked up a leaf from the jujube tree. "Take a look at this leaf. Is it thinner than Xian paper?" The two of them only glanced at it and nodded. "Then, if this kid were to say that my paper would be as thick as the leaves of this jujube tree, would you believe me?" "No. Impossible," the two of them said in unison. "This old man has lived for 70 years and I have never heard of such a miraculous technique. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. For example, the wine that you drank just now. Before you drank it, would you have thought that such a good wine existed in this world?" The two of them were stunned. It was true. Before they met Zhang Feng, or heard about Zhang Feng's so-called white wine, how could they believe that there was a wine as clear as water? And such a strong wine? But now? Wasn't Zhang Feng the one who had displayed all of these in the past? The two of them looked at each other in horror. They both thought of something that they didn't even dare to think about. Combined with all the things that Zhang Feng had done, could this lad really make such a paper? However, they couldn't figure it out. They really couldn't figure it out. After all, the two of them had lived for most of their lives. Although they weren't very knowledgeable, at least they could find ancient books, rare books, and rumors among the people. They had seen more than Zhang Feng. But at this time, after they racked their brains for a long time, they really couldn't find any record of this kind of paper. Involuntarily, the two of them were shocked. "Lad, can you really make such a paper?" "Yes," Zhang Feng answered with certainty. "And soon, in less than half a month, this lad will give each of you 50 pounds of paper that is better than Xian paper. How about it?" Chapter 7:15. Yu Shinan felt a little dizzy. From Zhang Feng's confident expression and tone, Yu Shinan had already believed Zhang Feng's words. After all, it was just like what he had just said. If there was no porcelain job, how could he stop this job? After all, Zhang Feng should know the seriousness of this matter. If he really dared to lie in front of him, not only would Yu Shinan turn around and leave in anger, he would also immediately write a letter to the emperor. However, Yu Shinan also believed in Zhang Feng on another point. He believed in the emperor, the retired emperor, the crown prince, and the others. Not to mention the emperor, even the retired emperor, he could give the ancient texts that he had always regarded as a treasure to Zhang Feng. He also took the initiative to take on the position of the honorary vice dean of White Deer College. He knew what this meant the most. This was equivalent to helping Zhang Feng take the blame for this rotten pot. At the same time, it was also a kind of deterrence. This White Deer College belonged to him, Li Yuan. Whoever dared to touch the college would have to see if they could take a beating first. If he didn't have any tricks, how could Li Yuan establish the Tang dynasty? Without a pair of eyes, how could Li Yuan allow Zhang Feng to exist and have such a good relationship with Zhang Feng? Thinking of this, Yu Shinan finally put down the huge rock in his heart. He smiled bitterly and said, "Kid, do you know if this matter is spread out, how many literati will you drive crazy?" Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "I don't know. This has nothing to do with me. Time is actually one wave after another. If you don't enter, there will only be the waves behind you that will drag you into a bottomless abyss, never to see the sun again. So, teacher, do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing for me to do this? Yu Shinan was once again stunned by Zhang Feng's words. Time is like a wave, one wave higher than the previous one. Yu Shinan recalled Zhang Feng's words over and over again in his heart. In the end, the more he thought about it, the more inconceivable it was. He simply stopped thinking about it. His head hurt. Yu Shinan rubbed his forehead and shook his head with a smile. This old man thought that he had already thought too highly of you, but, looking at you now, this old man suddenly feels that he can't see through you anymore. Tell me, what exactly is this thin paper that you speak of made of? Zhang Feng didn't want to say it, but a sly look flashed in his eyes as he said, actually, if Mr. needs it, I can tell Mr. the formula. Wait. Don't say such vicious words in the future, especially outside. Don't even mention it. This is a piece of advice from the old man. Zhang Feng sighed, this kid will remember. However, there's nothing that can't be said. After all, I'm planning to open such a class in this academy in the future. All right. Let's not talk about it anymore. Under Yu Shinan's warning gaze, Zhang Feng could only shut up. However, Yu Shinan couldn't help but ask about the papermaking technique. Zhang Feng didn't hold back and told Yu Shinan everything except the core technique. After listening, Yu Shinan said in surprise, isn't this the raw material used to make rice paper? It's just that it's missing pine needles and birch bark. Why do you want to add these two things? Well, there's something else. The birch bark, pine needles, and the plant fiber and the bamboo are essential elements to support the formation of a piece of paper. There's also another thing in the birch bark. This thing is also necessary for the formation of paper, just like an adhesive, plant fiber. Yu Shinan wasn't the only one who didn't understand. Even Sun Simiao, who dealt with these plants and herbs all year round, was dumbfounded. Listening to the new terms that kept popping out of Zhang Feng's mouth, the two of them were completely dumbfounded. What are these? What are these? In the end, the two of them could only sigh helplessly. We're old. As you said before, us old guys are like small water droplets that have been slapped into the bottomless abyss by the waves. We're useless. Zhang Feng's face turned serious when he heard this. Mr. Bo, sure, you're too serious. Although you say that, there are some things that you can't just chase after the heart and forget the essence. You and elder son are like the rope tied around my waist. When I drift too far away, you too can still follow the rope and pull me back. Another sentence that they didn't understand. The two of them laughed bitterly again. He stood up and said, that's enough. Today, I originally wanted to persuade you not to neglect the essentials and focus on trifles. In the end, I was taught a lesson by you. If those old fellows were to know about this old man would lose all face. The two of them were about to leave as they spoke, but after they took a few steps, Yu Shinan suddenly turned around and asked, Kid, the paper you mentioned just now, how long will it take you to make it? If we count the paper for the first test, 3 days. In 3 days, I can make about 300 to 500 caddies. 3 days? So fast? Yu Shinan was stunned. How long have you prepared? Zhang Feng thought about it. If we count the time from building the shed to building the site, 10 days. Yu Shinan took a deep breath and said, Kid, if you can make the paper you mentioned in 3 days, the old man will promise you that you don't need to do anything. Even if the old man doesn't care about his face, he will tie those 3 old guys up to the mountain for you. Zhang Feng grinned when he heard this. Deal. Chapter 7:16. This time, Zhang Feng finally found his motivation. He did not expect the paper to be as expensive as the poem said. No wonder Ma Zhou was willing to raise horses for a book. So, it was all because of this? He pestered Yu Shinan, and with Sun Simiao as his witness, he wrote down the contract. Zhang Feng immediately woke up and took a bath naked under the waterfall. This caused a group of women at the construction site to scold him for a long time. Only then did Zhang Feng run down the mountain. Before he reached the halfway point, he met Gao Kan, who was driving the mule back to the mountain. When Gao Kan saw Zhang Feng going down the mountain alone, he forcefully lifted Zhang Feng onto the mule's back and pulled the mule away. Zhang Feng could only endure the pain in his crotch and let Gao Kan pull the mule towards the paper mill. When they were halfway up the mountain, Zhang Feng could smell the smell of blood and the sounds of shouting. Looking through the gaps in the leaves, he could see that in the valley on the left side of the mountain, there was a cloud of smoke and dust. Inside, Tufu Zhang's voice was the loudest. "Gao Kan, how's the piggery? Today, I heard that Butcher Zhang brought over 100 butchers over there. I don't know the details, but I heard about it when I was having lunch at the paper mill. Also, young Master Li Gan was in charge of more than 100 cauldrons at Tong Huifang." When Zhang Feng heard this, he could not help but be interested. He urged Gao Kan to take a look at the piggery, but Gao Kan did not want to. He pulled on the mule's reins and almost threw Zhang Feng off the mule's back down the mountain. "Headmaster, you are a scholar, so you can see blood. Besides, going to such a filthy place will only dirty your eyes." When Zhang Feng heard this, he could not help but be speechless. "Who told you all this bullshit?" Zhang Feng stared and said, "Tell me, who told you this?" "The village chief of Tong Huifang said it. Just this afternoon, when he came to bring us lunch, he said it." Gao Kan directly betrayed the village chief. When Zhang Feng heard this, he instantly felt that the village chief must have drunk too much. If he was not there, he would have wasted a lot of things. One must know that the pig's body was full of treasures. Pig's blood, pig's liver, not to mention pig's kidneys. Those were all delicacies. Just a moment ago, when Zhang Feng smelled the overwhelming stench of blood, he knew that this thing had been completely ruined. Under Zhang Feng's insistence, Gao Kan could only carry Zhang Feng to the entrance of the piggery. At this moment, inside the door formed by more than a dozen thick trees, one could see vague figures busying themselves through the fog. Pots and stoves built by a few stones were lined up on both sides of the shack. In the middle of the shack, there was even a wooden rack with a head of pork that had been cleaned and prepared to be cooked. The village chief leaned on his walking stick and squinted his eyes, watching the crowd. His eyes were already narrowed into slits, but when he saw Zhang Feng come in, he hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng out of the door. "Fengzi, how can you come to this place? It will dirty your body." When Zhang Feng heard this, he smiled bitterly. Meanwhile, the old village chief glared at Gao Kan and said, "You fool, this old man already told you, you're not allowed to tell Fengzi. Did you turn a deaf ear to it? From now on, don't even think about getting a piece of pork to eat from here." Seeing the old village head venting his anger on Gao Kan, Zhang Feng pointed at the stream that was dyed red with blood and said, "Old village head, you've wronged him. Look at this water. If this continues, in less than 3 days, this Shao mountain will be filled with the smell of blood within 100 li radius. How can anyone live on this mountain? Look at that side." As Zhang Feng spoke, he pointed at the downstream of the paper mill and said, "You can see that place. You also know how important that place is to me. Look, if you do this, won't my place be ruined?" The village chief originally wanted to argue, but when he heard this, his face changed greatly. He knew that place, and even in this piggery, there were only 3 people who knew about it. What was this? This was Fengzi trusting him. But at this time, when Zhang Feng said this, the village chief became anxious. "Then what should we do? This is something that cost 3,000 guanwen to do. I was foolish. I will go and ask Jing Tufu and those bastards to dig a hole and bury the pig blood." Wait. Zhang Feng hurriedly pulled the village chief back. "You don't have to worry about this. I will go and find Jing Tufu and the others. Also, this pig blood is also a delicious dish. If you don't believe me, you can find someone to get me a pot of pig blood. Wait, I will make a pot of good food for you to eat." The village chief was a little confused. "This stinky pig blood can be eaten?" Zhang Feng sighed. "Who said this pig blood can't be eaten? Not only this pig blood, think about the pig intestines I sent you before. Wasn't there something black in it? That is pig blood. The village chief thought carefully and instantly realized. Because he had lost his teeth, Zhang Feng had been taking good care of him. When he came out with the soft pig trotters, the pig intestines, he would secretly give him some cooked ones to go with his wine at night. Every time, there would be a large piece of something black in it. He did not know what it was. Anyway, it was okay to chew. As he ate and ate, he felt that this thing was quite delicious. Now that Zhang Feng said this, the village chief came to a realization. Then, he fiercely stomped his foot, leaned on his walking stick, and shouted as he turned around, "Then according to what you said, damn blind Zheng, how much pig blood did you waste?" Chapter 717. Zhang Feng ignored the old village chief. He walked around the factory and instructed old he and the others on how to remove the stench from the pig's intestines. Then, he found a stove and asked someone to prepare the things he needed. At this time, Butcher Zheng rushed over with a butcher's knife in his hand. When he saw Zhang Feng, he hurriedly asked, "Feng Zi, I heard from the old man that this pig's blood is also good stuff?" The butchers behind Butcher Zheng widened their eyes and stared at Zhang Feng as they spoke. They had slaughtered pigs and sheep their whole lives. They had even slaughtered those precious cows, horses, and mules. But who knew that this bloody thing could be eaten? Under the old village chief's scolding, they finally could not sit still and hurriedly came to find Zhang Feng to find out what was going on. After all, if this thing was real, then they would really be wasting God's gift. However, it wasn't that they hadn't thought of this thing, but when they saw the bloody and stinky blood, they felt disgusted. However, everyone knew about Zhang Feng's abilities. Moreover, he was now the dean. How many things did the dean come up with before? Which one of them was not strange and strange? In addition, he had miraculously removed the stench from the pork. When everyone thought about it, they were instantly shocked. They put down the pig that was ready to bleed and hurriedly came over. When Zhang Feng heard that, he did not say anything. He only urged Gao Ken to start the fire. Then, under everyone's gaze, he boiled half a pot of water. Then, he sprinkled some salt and lime powder into a pot of bubbling pig's blood. Only then did he stir the pig's blood and pour it into the pot. Not long after, the water boiled. The pig's blood also magically turned from its initial purplish-red color to a dark brown color. On top of this blood, there were layers of blood foam floating. Zhang Feng gently removed the blood foam. Then, when the boiling water boiled again, Zhang Feng fished it out and sliced it in front of everyone's stunned eyes. Then, he casually took some pig's head and innards from the pork that had just been cooked and was waiting to be put into a big urn next door. In an instant, everyone in this pork food processing factory slowly gathered around to watch Zhang Feng personally cut the meat. Zhang Feng unhurriedly cut these things into slices. Then, he scooped a spoonful of lard and threw it into the red-hot pot. After that, he put the pepper, cinnamon, dogwood leaves, and other things into the pot. Only then did he pour all these cooked things into the pot and stir-fry them. In an instant, the numbing taste of the peppercorns and the spicy taste of the dogwood mixed with the fragrance of the meat magically caused the fragrance of the pork to burst out completely. It was a fragrance that no one had ever smelled before. Although they hadn't eaten yet, everyone's gluttony had already been aroused. Zhang Feng divided the meat and vegetables in the pot into 30 medium-sized basins before saying, "Come, come, come. Have a taste. This is good stuff." Only then did the old village chief arrive with his crutch. When he saw Zhang Feng cooking in front of so many people, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. "Fengzi, you are the dean. How can you do such a vulgar thing?" Zhang Feng had a headache. He pointed at these things and corrected him, "Old village chief, you are wrong. This is money. Do you see it? Do you smell it? These are basins of money. Come, come, come. Have a taste, especially this pig's blood. Have a taste." While speaking, Zhang Feng pushed the old village chief forward. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he handed him a pair of chopsticks and urged him to eat. "Boy, I used to be in this line of work. Don't say such things again in the future. Now you may think this work is a lowly profession, but wait and see how old he and the others can pry open the mouths of those rich people in Chang and City with basins of delicious food within 3 hours. Really? The old village chief was still a little suspicious. Zhang Feng pointed at the vegetables in the bowl and said, "Why don't you try it first? Then you'll know." "Kid, I'm not boasting." Under the suspicious eyes of the old village chief, he slowly picked up a piece of pig's blood. In an instant, the old village chief narrowed his eyes and chewed slowly. As his cheeks slowly wriggled, the old village chief suddenly burst into a burst of exclamation. "Fengzi, old man has eaten your braised meat and the things in your tavern before. But what is this? How can it be so delicious when so many things are stewed in a pot?" Zhang Feng smiled but didn't say anything. He just looked at the crowd. Then he asked, "How is it? What's the difference between this and the braised meat today?" "Fengzi, if it were before, I would be worried that this braised meat wouldn't be sold. But now, old he, I can assure you with my head, this thing." Zhang Feng interrupted old he and said, "Let's not talk about this. Don't you trust my skills? Did you see clearly when I was cooking just now?" At this time, the crowd was busy eating. How could they have time to answer? They could only nod their heads desperately. Only then did Zhang Feng slowly walk out and said, "The pig's body, other than the fur and that plaything, is all good stuff. In the future, if you can't sell the things that aren't easy to sell, just use the way I cooked and serve the rest to the rich families in Chang." And the next day, everyone's expression froze. But Zhang Feng had already walked out of the food factory. Before he went far, old he hurriedly asked, "Does this dish have a name? Let's call it pig slaughter dish." Chapter 7:18. After Zhang Feng finished dealing with the braised meat processing factory, he hurried to the paper mill. Now, everything on the mountain was starting. Relatively speaking, although it was proceeding in an orderly manner, it still looked a little messy. Zhang Feng had no choice but to deal with the important things bit by bit. But even so, there were still problems everywhere. Fortunately, the slaughtering pig farm and the construction site on the mountain were basically handled by Li Qingqian. This gave Zhang Feng a chance to breathe. Originally, he thought that papermaking was the simplest and most labor-saving thing. But when Zhang Feng arrived at the paper mill, he couldn't help but black out and almost fainted. He saw that on the water mill in front of the paper mill, bundles of boiled bamboo were mixed with pine needles and birch bark. Little by little, they were ground into a juice-like substance. Originally, everything was normal. But when Zhang Feng saw that those people couldn't even pass through the sieve and just poured into the washing pool, Zhang Feng couldn't help but stop everyone. "Who told you to do this? Qian Wanli, you bastard, get out here." Although these things weren't worth much, once they were made, they would be worth a lot of money. Especially after knowing the price of rice paper, these buckets of paper pulp made Zhang Feng's heart feel like a knife was gouging it. Under Zhang Feng's angry roar, the dirty Qian Wanli hurriedly came out of the refining room. Zhang Feng grabbed him and pointed to the washing pool. He asked, "Who told them to do this?" "We are making paper, not carpet. Didn't you see the formula I gave you?" Qian Wanli was stunned. Using a long wooden spoon, he stirred the lush green and milky-colored resin. In an instant, he scooped up a large pile of bamboo dregs and leaf dregs from the bottom of the pool. He couldn't help but feel a little disgusted. "Dean, I have clearly told them. Who knew that it was fine just now, this?" Zhang Feng sighed and asked, "Who did this just now? Come out." As he spoke, more than 30 students and some craftsmen stood timidly in the courtyard. They looked at Zhang Feng's gloomy face, not knowing what to do. Zhang Feng pointed to the washing pool and asked, "Who did this?" Reporting to the dean, it was this little one. Under Zhang Feng's anger, a short craftsman timidly stood up. "Who told you to do this?" The craftsman panicked and said, "This lowly one used to work at Luozhou's paper mill. This lowly one used to do this." When young Master Qian mentioned it today, this lowly one said that this lowly one used to do this. There's nothing wrong with it, Zhang Feng felt a little dizzy. From today onwards, it doesn't matter whether you did it before or not. Do you understand? If anyone feels that there's a problem, you can leave immediately. During the construction of the paper mill, Zhang Feng specially asked Li Gan and Du Dabing to find some people who knew the process of making paper among the people who came up the mountain to help build the paper mill. At that time, he really didn't expect that there would be such a solution. But today, on the mountain, after hearing Yu Shernan's words and combining it with what had just happened, Zhang Feng suddenly realized a problem. If they wanted paper, they had to produce paper in 3 days. Those from the past couldn't be left alive. When Zhang Feng thought of this, he waved his hand to get everyone to continue working. Instead, he called Xian Wanli to the side of the paper mill. He pointed at the paper mill and said, "Wait, I will personally train these people. You have to remember every step of making paper. If you learn quickly, you will probably have finished paper by tomorrow. But for those with fixed thinking, none of them can be left alive." Xian Wanli was a little confused when he heard this. "Dean, how long did you say it would take to produce paper?" "Tomorrow at the latest, the day after tomorrow at the latest." SSS. When Xian Wanli heard this, he sucked in a breath of cold air. However, before he could speak, Zhang Feng interrupted him. "Don't be so surprised. If I tell you that once you learn all of this, you will be scared to death if you can produce 300 caddies of paper by tomorrow. This is the normal operation of the academy. Slowly get used to it. But there is one thing you have to remember. You don't have to work, but you have to keep your eyes fixed on it. You can't be careless, understand? 3 days, 300 caddies." Xian Wanli was a little dizzy, but more than that, he was excited. It wasn't that he didn't know the price of paper. If they could really produce 300 caddies of paper in 3 days, how much money would that be? That family was the one who opened the bank. After thinking about it for a moment, they were shocked by the astronomical number. No wonder the dean was angry. Damn it, who wouldn't be angry when it happened to them? It was 1,000 strings of coins for a caddy of paper. How much was 300 caddies of paper? At this time, he understood why the dean passed on the paper-making technique to him so solemnly yesterday. If the paper-making technique in the past was like picking up money, then the paper-making technique now and the money were like the leaves on the ground. Chapter 719. Just as Zhang Feng was carefully imparting the paper-making technique, Li Shimon's carriage swayed out of the Vermilion Bird Gate. He casually looked at the panicked people in Chang and city and the faint smell of meat coming from the things they tightly held in their arms. Li Shimon was stunned. If it was only 1 or 2 people, it would make sense. However, as he looked, there were more and more people, and they were all poor people. They were like thieves, holding their bowls and hurrying away. On the contrary, the closer they got to the city gate, the more people there were. Li Shimon could even faintly see that those were actually meat from the places where they were tightly holding their bowls. Good heavens, where did this meat come from? Li Shimon ordered the Jinwu guards to stop a commoner. He wanted to buy the meat, but that person insisted on not exchanging it. With no other choice, Li Shimon got off the carriage and asked, "Where did you get the meat in your hands? Could it be that he stole it?" When the person saw that he couldn't get the meat, and Li Shimon said that he robbed it, he was instantly shocked. Looking at Li Shimon's expensive clothes, he was frightened and hurriedly said, "There is a lot of meat outside the city. The people in Tonghuifang are distributing meat there." Tonghuifang? Distributing meat? There was such a good thing? Wait. Tonghuifang? Li Shimon's eyes could not help but flash a touch of horror. Wasn't that where that brat Zhang Feng was? Didn't they all go up Mount E? In addition, there were 300,000 pigs going up Mount E yesterday. Could it be, "Let's go, quickly go out of the city"? Li Shimon was even more curious. As soon as he got on the carriage, he hurriedly ordered. How could the Jinwu guards dare to delay? The whip cracked in the air, and the horse also shook its hooves and ran wildly in Chang and city. As the horses galloped, the aroma of meat in the air became stronger and stronger. In the beginning, the commoners were still a little secretive. However, once they left the Eastern market, there were groups of 2 or 3 squatting on the roadside and gnawing on their dirty hands. The closer they got to the city gate, the more things like this happened, and the more people there were. Even the garrison of Chang and city, the patrolling soldiers, and the officers of the Chang and local government also joined in. Li Shimon's carriage eventually squeezed out of Chang and city. As soon as he stepped out of the door, Li Shimon was dumbfounded and a little annoyed. The guards stationed at the city gate didn't even care about the gate anymore. They were all lining up and smelling the aroma of the meat in the air. They were drooling as they looked at the dozen or so pots of meat that were burying on the other side of the moat outside the city. Seeing this, Li Shimon felt helpless. What was that brat Zhang Feng up to this time? This was too, however, Li Shimon just sighed and didn't really blame him. After all, when Li Qingxian did this, Li Shimon knew about it. If Li Shimon didn't step in, would Li Qingxian dare to do such a thing that humiliated the dignity of the royal family? Moreover, this was caused in Chang and city. Li Shimon also felt a little guilty. He didn't know how it felt to not eat meat for 3 months, but among these people, eating meat once a year was already a luxury. Following the crowd, Li Shimon slowly walked out of the suspension bridge and came to Lao He's side. Only then did Li Shimon slowly get out of the carriage. Lao He and the others, who were distributing meat, also greeted Li Shimon warmly when they saw him. Yo! Isn't this Lao Li? Have you eaten? It just so happens that the miracle doctor and the others are fighting to eat pork trotters. If you want, I'll pick a fat and tender one for you. Li Shimon was a little speechless. However, looking at Lao He couldn't say anything. He asked, did Feng do all this? While speaking, Lao He had already washed a lotus leaf with water like a thief. Then, he handed the pork trotters and a pig's tail to Li Shimon while swallowing his saliva. He sniffed the tempting smell and said, actually, I shouldn't say anything, but this matter almost caused Feng to be in trouble. I'm not trying to sow discord between your young master and me, but you should do something about it. If Feng didn't meditate for the whole night, you might not be able to see Feng now. Li Shimon was shocked. He quickly asked, what do you mean? What could Lao He say? He pointed at these people and the pork trotters and said, do you know how many nights Feng stayed up for this? You don't know, right? Every night, I would get up to change the water for these pork trotters. Every night, I saw that the lights in Feng's room were never turned off. He spent the whole night researching this method to get rid of the smell of pork. Just take last night as an example. If it wasn't for the celestial phenomenon, perhaps. Sigh. Let's not talk about it anymore. Go up the mountain and ask Feng yourself. As Lao He spoke, he gave each of Li Shimon's entourage a piece of pork trotters. Then, he went back to work. On the other hand, Li Shimon looked back and saw that there were more people coming out of the city gate. There were also more people coming from outside the city after hearing the news. They held a stick in a big basin. They didn't even intend to let go of the soup in the pot. When they got it, they gratefully grabbed a bunch of wild grass by the river and jumped into the moat. They put some loaches, fish, and prawns on the river. Just like that, they squatted by the river and ate their family's food for the day. Li Shimon looked at the pork trotters in his hand and choked. He took a small bite. It was soft and fragrant. As soon as he got on the carriage, Li Shimon said coldly to Xiao Gizi beside him, tell the people in Jiangnan to speed up the transportation of grain. Yes. Chapter 720. Crackle, crackle. At the stall where old he and the others were distributing pork with great fanfare outside the city. In Chang and city, the sound of firecrackers was heard continuously. In the sound of firecrackers, the red cloth on the signboards of the strange signboards named Chang and Hotel, No. 1 branch, White Deer College branch, was revealed in front of the shocked eyes of all the onlookers. Those who were familiar with them would not forget that most of those shops belonged to the Crown Prince, Li Qingxian, Qing Chumo, Zhang Sun, Chong, the Du family, and the Wei family. That was the most shocking thing. The signboards of those strange hotels were exactly the same. The only difference was that they were arranged in order from number 1 branch to number 2 branch. After the firecrackers stopped, the shop owners came out to greet the customers. All the old and young men of Chang'an City. Today is the opening day of our small shop. Everything is half price. I hope you can help us. As the shop owner's voice fell, everyone could not sit still. However, those who could enter were either officials or rich businessmen in Chang'an City. After all, the Crown Prince and the others were famous. Today was the opening day of their shop, so their eyes were very bright. If they did not go in to support them, it would be terrible if they came to settle accounts with them later. Everyone had no choice but to enter the small restaurant. On the one hand, they wanted to see what this strange shop was selling. On the other hand, they wanted to choose a side. Obviously, the Crown Prince was creating momentum. Moreover, they also knew what happened outside the city. The Crown Prince stirred up trouble in Shao Mountain and opened an academy. Everyone knew that. Now, he came up with such a thing. Who would not be curious? As soon as they entered the door. Just like that, he sat there steadily. In an instant, a manservant ran over with a tray in tow. "Gentlemen, what would you like to eat?" While speaking, the waiter put the tray in front of them. In an instant, the things on the tray made everyone's eyes light up. There were more than a dozen bamboo slices on the tray. The names of dishes were written on the bamboo slices. Moreover, they had never heard of these dishes before. Braised pork with soy sauce. Braised pork knuckle with soy sauce, stir-fried kidney, and so on. This left everyone dumbfounded. At the entrance of the most conspicuous Taiha Inn in the East Market, the manager of Taiha Inn, who was also an inner disciple of the chief minister of Taichung Temple, saw that the Crown Prince's restaurant had changed its appearance. He couldn't help but rush into the restaurant with gifts. The manservant seemed to recognize him and personally called the shopkeeper over. The shopkeeper cupped his fists and said, "I didn't think that shopkeeper's son would come to visit. You've really made my humble store shine. You're too kind. We're all people inside. It's only right that we help each other." Both of them knew each other very well, so they didn't waste any time on pleasantries and went straight into the topic. Manager's son pointed at the plates on the tray and asked, "What are these dishes?" The restaurant manager cupped his fists and said, "Please allow me to keep you in suspense. You and I are old acquaintances. Today's meal is on me." Hearing this, shopkeeper's son waved his hands. Although this person was an ordinary person like him, he was someone from the Crown Prince's residence. He had no way of establishing ties with him. However, he couldn't refuse to give face to him. Looking at the people watching from the entrance, he could only give up. Wine, beer. 3 bamboo tubes were served. After waiting for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, shopkeeper's son's nose twitched. He couldn't help but lose his calm. The people watching from outside couldn't help but be attracted by the fragrance. They couldn't help but walk into the small restaurant. They casually ordered a few dishes that sounded pretty good. Then, everyone stared at the linen curtain in the kitchen. The dishes are here. A moment later, Fatty Zhou personally carried a large tray out of the kitchen. In an instant, shopkeeper's son hurriedly stood up and bowed to Fatty Zhou. "Imperial Chef Zhou, why are you here?" "Imperial Chef Zhou? What's going on?" Everyone was stunned. After Imperial Chef Zhou put down the dishes, he smiled and said, "Everyone, please don't be polite and don't take offense. The shopkeeper of this restaurant today is a relative of mine, and I have nothing better to do, so I came to help. All the servants here were trained by me, so there's no need to be polite. Come. Everyone, sit. Everyone who can come today, it's all on my head." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. The legend of Imperial Chef Zhou was well known. This barbecue incident was because of the rumors that Imperial Chef Zhou had a good master. After learning from his master for less than a month, he became an imperial chef in the palace. How could this be possible? The people trained by him, then, while everyone was chatting, the dishes were all served. But, seeing that Imperial Chef Zhou didn't say anything, no one dared to move their chopsticks. They could only smell the delicious food and drool. As expected of an imperial chef. The dishes made by him are simply. Compared to the dishes you made, everything we've eaten before is like pig feed. I don't know. Apart from this restaurant, I don't think it's possible to find such delicacies. Imperial Chef Zhou, what kind of meat is used in these dishes? Why do I feel that it's not any kind of meat that I know? That's right, Imperial Chef Zhou. Could I trouble you to tell me what kind of meat this is? Why is it so fragrant? It's not as dry as mutton, nor is it like any other kind of meat. Instead, when I eat it, it has a juicy feeling. Fatty Zhou rolled his eyes and said, "Do you really want to know?" When everyone heard this, how could they be willing? They hurriedly asked, "Please tell us." "Do you really want to know?" Fatty Zhou asked. How could they bear this kind of torture? They all begged. Fatty Zhou pointed at the door and said, "Do you know what happened outside the city today?" Everyone was stunned. Then, they looked at the delicately cut meat on the plate and two words flashed in their minds. Pork. This is pork. Chapter 721. How could they not know what kind of meat it was? However, none of them were as panicked as Fatty Zhou was. Instead, they began to carefully savor the taste of the food after learning about it. Manager's son narrowed his eyes and frowned. He tasted the meat for a long time before saying, "Imperial Chef Zhou, may I ask why this thing doesn't have the stench of pork? Instead, it has an indescribable allure?" Imperial Chef Zhou cupped his fists and sat down. He waved his hand and a chef instantly brought out a large tray containing the pig head meat. Imperial Chef Zhou didn't avoid arousing suspicion. He used a small knife to cut the meat piece by piece, then dipped it in the dipping sauce and threw it into his mouth. He then said, "I don't know. My teacher didn't tell me, and as a student, I didn't dare to ask." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They all knew about the 300,000 pigs that went to Shao Mountain yesterday. But today, so much pork appeared in Chang'an. They couldn't help but feel puzzled. But thinking about it, they suddenly thought of an extremely terrifying thing. That was the Crown Prince. These stores were all the Crown Prince's businesses. Moreover, on the first day of opening, he actually called an imperial chef. This was something that ordinary people couldn't do. Only the Crown Prince could do it. Moreover, he said that the chefs in these stores were all personally trained by Imperial Chef Zhou. Did that mean that the things sold in these stores were almost the same? Then, some time ago, they heard that Divine Doctor's son went to White Deer College in Shao Mountain and didn't come back. Then, they heard that something happened to the dean of White Deer College. Jing Shu made a scene in Chang'an City. Then, the matter was left unsettled. After that, it was the 300,000 pigs and everything that happened today. Could it be that Zhang Feng was Imperial Chef Zhou's teacher? How could this be? This was simply unheard of, all right? Manager's son couldn't help but ask, "Imperial Chef Zhou, may I ask if your teacher is the dean of White Deer College in Shao Mountain, Viscount Zhang Feng, Lord Zhang?" Fatty Zhou heard this and hurriedly stood up. His face was incomparably respectful as he cupped his hands towards the door and said, "You're right. My teacher is Lord Zhang." Buzz. In an instant, everyone's heads exploded. Understood. Everything was clear now. Everything was clear now. Everyone suddenly thought of the imperial edict from before. Didn't the imperial edict already mention the skill of cooking? Now that they thought about it and looked at Imperial Chef Zhou's cooking skills, and then looked at the dishes that they had never heard of before, they suddenly felt that they were too short-sighted to have mocked the academy behind their backs. Once they thought of this, how could they sit still when they were basically businessmen? One by one, they took out their copper coins and prepared to pay the bill. It was over. Even if they had to sell their pots and pans, they had to let their children go to Mount Shao. This was simply, however, the shopkeeper glanced at everyone's money and remained unmoved as he said, "Thank you, this shop does not accept money." Just as manager's son was about to hand over the money, he couldn't help but stop. "Old Pan, what do you mean by this?" Manager Pan of Chang and Hotel smiled and pointed at a notice in the middle of the hall. "This is the order from above. All the dishes and drinks will be sold according to grain. But we are all regular customers, and today is the opening day of the restaurant. So, I can't do anything about it." What kind of rule was this? 1 plate of grain for 1 dish? Although it sounded like they had gotten a great bargain, what was the price of grain now? They didn't even dare to think about it. Although the most common price on the market was 10 copper coins, 10 copper coins per dish was simply too cheap. If it was in the past, they would definitely eat until this small shop went bankrupt. But now, it was impossible. Everyone was lacking in grain, and the market had a price but no supply. This made them feel uneasy. It wasn't that they couldn't take out food. After all, they worked for the officials, and naturally, the officials wouldn't starve them. Moreover, as people who often mingled with the merchants, naturally, their families relied on their connections to store food. It was just but when they remembered that this was the Crown Prince's shop, they could only laugh and go home to get the grain. This kind of thing didn't just happen in this shop in the Easter market. Basically, the 70 or so Chang and hotels that opened today all had the same rule. In a moment, the news spread like wildfire in Chang'an. "Have you heard? The 70 or so Chang and hotels that open today don't sell money, they only accept grain." In a tea house, people gathered together to discuss this rare thing. A middle-aged man in fine clothes who had just entered sighed when he saw several old friends. In an instant, this voice attracted everyone's attention. Everyone had never heard of such a rare thing before. They hurriedly asked, "Isn't this the shopkeeper of the tavern? Are you talking about the 70 or so shops that open at the same time in Chang'an City today?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man stood up and cupped his hands in front of the crowd. "Isn't that right? Today, a tavern opened next to my tavern, but the owner of this tavern is a mysterious big shot. So, I went there to show my support and get familiar with him. But guess what? I ate 3 plates of meat dishes and received 3 pounds of grain from him. But I heard that the dishes there were prepared by people from the palace." Hearing this, the crowd couldn't help but be in an uproar. What? There's such a good thing? 3 plates of food for only 3 pounds of grain? But why does this shop only accept grain? Let's go and take a look. Chapter 722. For the entire morning, Zhang Feng had been busy with the papermaking workshop. After all, the construction of the academy was about to enter its final stage. Now that the main construction had been completed, only the final painting was left, as well as the layout of the roads and courtyards. Zhang Feng did not need to worry about these things. After all, other than the red paint, there was also the structure of the main construction. Even the firing of the cement and lime powder were basically done by the people of Tonghui Workshop, as well as Ganziyuan. This saved Zhang Feng a lot of trouble. Otherwise, Zhang Feng would have been driven crazy. However, seeing that the main construction of the academy was about to be completed, Zhang Feng was anxious to build up the reputation of the academy. Moreover, when attracting students, it was better to find teachers. Otherwise, when the time came, it would be embarrassing for the academy. Therefore, all of this was attributed to the papermaking technique. Once the paper was produced, Zhang Feng even thought about how to use the paper. However, after thinking about it, the paper was still too little. Just as Zhang Feng was lying on the recliner, thinking about whether to use primary school books as the basis for the textbooks, or to start with the standard Chinese alphabet. However, at this moment, Wei Shuyu, who was in charge of keeping watch, hurriedly knocked on Zhang Feng's door. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to greet her, Wei Shuyu said, "Lao Li is here." Without waiting for him to finish speaking, he heard a greeting from outside the door. As soon as Zhang Feng came out, he saw Li Shimen looking around the kitchen with his hands behind his back. He was still asking about the situation at the foot of the mountain. When he saw Zhang Feng come out, he laughed and said, "Today, Chang'an City can be said to be the most lively in more than a month." Zhang Feng understood what Li Shimen was talking about. He clasped his fist and said, "Now, your lifeless business has seen the light, right? Ha ha ha. Let's go, let's talk inside." Li Shimin laughed. Along the way, Li Shimin walked very slowly. Inside the palanquin, one secret report after another was delivered to him all the way up the mountain. These were all the changes that happened in Chang'an City today. That was not right. It was about everything in Chang'an City, including the business situation of the shops of the Crown Prince and the others, especially the impact of this incident on Chang'an City. Although the harvest today wasn't much, these 70 shops had already harvested at least 10 dans worth of grain in just over 2 hours. This undoubtedly made Li Shimin excited. Originally, he could only watch helplessly as the pig died. However, in the hands of Zhang Feng, not only did he eliminate the stench, but he also made it so delicious. Until now, when he thought of the braised pig trotters, Li Shimin couldn't help but salivate. Even Hunyang Mo whom he was proud of, couldn't help but like the latter more. Although it was a little greasy, wasn't that the nature of meat? Zhang Feng didn't say much. Anyway, he knew that Lao Li's purpose of going up the mountain today was nothing more than to get the pork agency right. After the two sat down, Li Shimin didn't talk nonsense. He asked, "Fengzi, I came here mainly because of the dispatch of troops. Now the troops have been dispatched, but when can we start to work on the weapons?" "Why? You're not a general, and you're not going to war. Why do you ask this?" Li Shimin was really stumped by Zhang Feng's question. Li Shimin's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly said, "Isn't it because Longjiedo, Guanyi Dao, and Tubo all have our businesses? I have to ask about this. Otherwise, if a war breaks out, it will be us who suffer, won't it? Besides, I also want to get your impenetrable shield and spear as soon as possible. Otherwise, if those Tubo people attack us, we have to have something to defend against them, right?" Li Shimin hurriedly corrected his words. Li Shimin really didn't want to send troops to help Tubo this time. He always wanted to do something. However, after hearing about Zhang Feng's magical training method, as well as these weapons, although he suppressed his thoughts, he still kept them in his heart. After all, if he could get these things a day earlier, to be honest, Li Shimin's dreams would be more comfortable at night. But Zhang Feng pointed outside and said, "You also saw what happened outside. I was dragged out of bed in the morning before the sun rose. How can I have time to do these things? At the very least, you have to wait a month later. You don't have to worry about this. Last time, your two subordinates, Old Yu and Old Qin, got the training manual from me. Those things are still useful for the time being, you don't have to worry about it." Li Shimin wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. He also saw what happened. Now that the mountain was in a mess, and Zhang Feng, who usually paid special attention to his appearance, was now covered in smoke and fire. Li Shimin couldn't say anything. He pointed at the kitchen outside and said, "What are you going to do with the one at the foot of the mountain? I saw dozens of people cooking braised meat in a big shed today. Are these the ones outside Chang'an City?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Lao Li, next time when you do these things, you have to use your brain more. We've known each other for more than half a year. Look at how stupid you are. If I wasn't smart, my white deer college would be in big trouble this time." Chapter 723. Li Shimin knew what Zhang Feng wanted to say. She had covered his mouth long ago. Li Shimin also knew that Zhang Feng was purposely changing the topic. He could only sigh helplessly and not say anything else. He also knew that haste made waste. Moreover, the current situation had not reached the point where they had to fight. After all, they had gone to Tubo. As for when they would be able to return, it was hard to say. Moreover, Feng Zi had also said that there was still a month or so before they could start tinkering. Moreover, Yu Qigong's training method for the new army would only show results after a month or so of weather. Therefore, after Li Shimin sighed, he could only drop the matter. "Are you talking about yesterday's matter? Qian really did go overboard with this matter." Li Shimin smiled and shook his head as he continued, "Last night, I heard that you almost had an accident. No, you almost had an accident twice? What's going on? The first time was when you asked the old scholar to secretly brew wine for you. The second time was last night. You almost scared people to death. Zhang Feng also knew that he had gone overboard last time. He rubbed his nose and said, "Who told old he and Feng Zi to not understand what I meant? Moreover, if I let you have diarrhea for 2 or 3 days, would you be able to take it?" As for yesterday, I was comprehending the mysteries of heaven. Li Shimin could not help but reveal a look of disdain when he heard this. Speak human language. Zhang Feng rubbed his nose and said, 300,000 pigs. You, Lao Li, also know what this means. If those stubborn old scholars knew about this, they would be deceiving their masters and destroying their ancestors. It would be an insult to the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. It would be an insult to the imperial edict. Lao Li, think about it for a moment. What does this mean? Once this matter is spread, the first emperor will be furious. If things don't go well, my head and the few of us will fall to the ground. Tell me, if this happened to you, wouldn't you be anxious? I'm thinking of a way. If something goes wrong, we'll all go to the guillotine today. Letting them worry for a night is already a light punishment. Who told your son not to use his brain before doing anything? Zhang Feng directly threw the responsibility to Li Qingqian. Who asked this brat to set him up? What Zhang Feng didn't know was that this matter was instigated by Li Shimin. His purpose was to show off in front of Zhang Feng, and then find out the method to create the invincible spear. Even if Zhang Feng couldn't solve this matter, Li Shimin had a way to forcefully calm this matter down. After all, currently, Shao Mountain was still under the banner of providing relief to the victims of the disaster. When Li Shimin didn't know that Zhang Feng had such a method, this pork could be eaten when he was hungry. At least, Li Shimin knew to add this thing in the porridge. As long as this gimmick existed, Li Shimin could calm this matter down. But he didn't expect that Zhang Feng could solve it so easily. Li Shimin suddenly felt that it was a little boring. Originally, he wanted to show off in front of this brat and get back his face, but now it seemed that, however, Li Shimin really had something to ask of him this time on the mountain. Feng, I met old he outside the city and he also ate the braised meat you made. I also saw that Chang and city is basically now, whether it's the guards or the civilians, they are all fighting for this delicacy. Do you want to use this method to get rid of the 300,000 pigs? Zhang Feng shook the recliner with certainty and said while lying on it, Don't you know what your son is doing in the city? Of course I know this. If he dares to do this without my permission, his legs will be broken. Isn't that enough? Since you know it, you naturally know my purpose. You also know that I am a businessman. You also know how many pigs the Tang dynasty has made this time, so, how could Zhang Feng not know what Li Shimin wanted to do? He smiled faintly and said, Lao Li, I know the purpose of your visit today is to get this formula, right? Hey! What are you talking about? How can I be that kind of person? The main purpose of my visit today is to worry about you, isn't it? While speaking, Li Shimin waved at the door. Little Gizi hurriedly took 2 boxes wrapped in red silk from behind him and carefully entered Zhang Feng's living room. In front of Li Shimin, he said, Prince Zhang, this is the 300-year-old ginseng that my master has treasured for many years and is reluctant to use. And this, brother Zhang Feng, this is my precious treasure. It is also the preface to the orchid pavilion that I promised you last time. Since your academy has opened, as a brother, it is not right if I don't give you a decent gift. Come, take a look. Although Li Shimin was reluctant, he still took out the preface to the orchid pavilion and the 300-year-old ginseng. Zhang Feng did not care about the ginseng. At this time, his eyes were attracted by the red silk box that Li Shimin was reluctant to put down. He gently opened the 3 layers of red silk and saw a red sandalwood box carved with the 3 stars Fu, Lu, and Shou, as well as the teaching of Confucius and Mencius. In an instant, a scroll that was still wrapped in gauze appeared in Zhang Feng's sight. When he saw this, Zhang Feng also knew Li Shimin's purpose. Instead, He closed the red sandalwood lid and looked at Li Shimin and said, "Lao Li, you are really awesome. You got the right to be my first agent in the Tang dynasty with this calligraphy. I have to be convinced." Chapter 724. Li Shimin really didn't understand the new words that popped out of Zhang Feng's mouth from time to time. When Zhang Feng said this thing, Li Shimin didn't even bother to ask. Anyway, the general meaning was that Zhang Feng was already considered to be the one to take care of this matter. Li Shimin stroked his beard and thought for a while before asking, "What is this agency thing you're talking about?" Zhang Feng had long known that Li Shimin didn't understand. Hearing his question, he immediately perked up. "Let me tell you, the meaning of this thing is, get to the point." Li Shimin coughed and interrupted Zhang Feng's endless speech. Zhang Feng smacked his lips and sighed that he had met a bad person. Then he said, "You also know that my academy is now gaining fame, so the name of the store must be decided by me. That is to say, you can partner with me, but this store, I don't care where you open it, but this name must be mine." Li Shimin thought for a while and asked, "Won't it be the same name as Li Gan's store?" "Yes." Li Shimin was a little speechless. Such a good thing was ruined by a store name. Not to mention other things, if you said you didn't know how to name it, you could just call it White Deer Hall or White Deer Building, etc. As for using Chung and Hotel No. 1 Store or White Deer College Store, what was going on? Li Shimin felt a headache when he thought that the whole Tang dynasty would have such a name in the future. How shameful. Thinking of this, Li Shimin was a little speechless. He asked, "Can this name be changed?" "It's too much. It's too unpleasant, isn't it?" Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and continued, "In fact, what I want to say is that you really don't know how to appreciate the coldness of this thing. Look, is this a place to eat?" Li Shimin nodded. Zhang Feng continued to ask, "Then is this shop a branch of White Deer College?" "No." Li Shimin immediately shook his head. Zhang Feng was about to say something, but after Li Shimin's uncooperative words, all the words in his stomach were instantly stuck in his throat, unable to go up. Zhang Feng felt very uncomfortable. He smacked his lips and asked, "No, what I mean is, do you not understand at all?" Zhang Feng was speechless. Li Shimin nodded, then shook his head. What a joke. He knew Zhang Feng's character very well. This guy was a chatterbox. Without you noticing, he would spout out all the things you wanted to know. This was good, but it was easy to be led astray. Hence, Li Shimin learned to be smart. He wouldn't give you a chance to show off. Li Shimin shook his head. I don't understand. I can understand that the business is a partnership. But I don't understand if you want to use the name of the shop. Also, who came up with this name? Isn't it a little too unpleasant? No, but I think the name sounds pretty good. Besides, you'll be the one providing the shop and the cook, while I'll be the one providing the skills and the recipes for the braised meat and other things. This is a win-win situation. Do you know what to do? This means that you only need to provide a shop assistant who knows how to manage the shop and a few other servants. As for the chef, do you see the foot of the mountain? There's such a big food factory at the foot of the mountain. Everyone there is learning how to cook. When the time comes, I'll send these people to your shop for free. You'll be taking advantage of me. Do you know that? Li Shimin really understood now. So, after talking for so long, you just want me to work for him? Hearing this, Zhang Feng coughed. He didn't say anything. He pointed to the door and walked out of the room with Li Shimin. They went to the kitchen. At this time, although old He and the rest were busy at the foot of the mountain, the women and children of Tong Huifang, as well as the 7 aunties from Tong Huifang's neighborhood, had become the main chefs on the mountain. Although Zhang Feng didn't teach them, under the guidance of old He and the rest, as well as the old village chief, these people improved very quickly. After all, here, not only could they learn skills, they could also eat their fill. Their children could also do some work. If they were lucky, they could even enter the academy. How could they not work hard? At this time, they saw Zhang Feng come. Everyone stopped what they were doing and greeted him. Zhang Feng cupped his fist to everyone, then pointed to the pot in the kitchen where the sauce was boiling and said, "Look, smell loudly. This thing, not to mention Dr. Sun, even if I put the meat in front of you, if you can make the same thing for me, it'll be my loss, okay? This thing is the key to braised meat. It's also the essence. Don't look down on this small bag. This bag, even if you give me 1,000 taels of gold, I won't sell it. Now, do you think that I'm going too far?" However, at this time, Li Shimon's eyes were stunned by a layer of stone-like thing on the stove. While dealing with Zhang Feng, he asked, "Fengzi, what is this thing?" "This?" Zhang Feng was also stunned. Looking at the cement on the stove that Li Shimon pointed to, he said, "This is cement." Li Shimon was stunned. He asked subconsciously, "What? Cement? What is this? The mud in the field?" Chapter 725. Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He was almost amused by Li Shimon's words. However, Zhang Feng suppressed his laughter and said, "I don't blame you for not knowing this. But you can't think of the mud in the field, right?" Li Shimon knew that this kid was laughing at him again. His face stiffened. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't say anything else. He pointed to the smoky mountain not far away and said, "Actually, I chose this place for a reason. The reason is that this ore is produced here." "Or?" Li Shimon was dumbfounded. "Fengzi, tell me about this." "But shouldn't we deal with this first?" Zhang Feng pointed to the thing in the pot. Li Shimon slapped his head and said, "Then, we'll do as you say. But don't be stingy about the recipe. Don't burn anything that should be given to me. Give it all to me." Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he heard this. If Li Qingxian and the others were to do it, he would be a little worried. After all, this thing would delay their studies. However, if Lao Li were to do it, it would be different. This way, not only would it cover Cheng and city, but the entire Tang dynasty. By then, White Deer College would be famous. At this time, seeing Li Shimon like this, Zhang Feng immediately cupped his fist and said, "Then, in the future, you have to look for Du Daibiang and Li Gan to negotiate with them. As for the specific matters, although our friendship is here, brothers still have to settle accounts clearly, right? So this. How do you plan to do it?" At this point, Li Shimon couldn't help but be shocked. This was money, and Li Shimon would need it in the future. As long as Zhang Feng imparted his culinary skills, he would definitely make a lot of money in the Tang dynasty and even the whole world. That was why Li Shimon was so nervous at this time. Seeing Li Shimon as if he was facing a formidable enemy, Zhang Feng was speechless. "Come on, aren't we brothers? If that's the case, let's split it 50-50. "No way. You've only contributed one piece of technology. No matter what, I'll still get 70% of it." No. I spent a lot of effort to come up with this formula. This. Then give me my preface to the Orchid Pavilion. Li Shimon used his trump card, and Zhang Feng was instantly terrified. "Alright, let's split it evenly then. After all, there are still many ways to earn money in the future." Zhang Feng could only admit defeat, but Li Shimon's next sentence instantly made Zhang Feng's hair stand on end. "Feng Zi, why don't you give me the wine you asked the old scholar to brew? I'll make it for you. I promise to hire the best winemaker for you. When the time comes, this thing will definitely be more profitable than this braised meat. Think about it. You've already made such a heaven-shaking dish. How could you lack such fine wine? Don't you think so?" Li Shimon fanned Zhang Feng's ears over and over again. Zhang Feng thought about it carefully and realized that it was indeed so. He couldn't help but squat on the pile of bricks outside the kitchen with Li Shimon. Li Shimon's saliva splattered everywhere as he talked. Zhang Feng died just like that. He was slowly led astray. "Feng Zi, let me tell you. Fine wine goes with fine food. You should understand this principle, right? Look, you have such delicious food, but you're missing this. Fine wine. This is like a newlywed without a bride. Don't you feel bad? And this fine wine. Think about it. How many great scholars need fine wine to create heaven-shaking works? And the commoners also need such fine wine to numb their troubles. Tell me, you have such fine wine, but you're still hiding it. What is this? This is a crime of possessing a treasure. What if one day those great scholars find out that this fine wine was made by you, but you've been hiding it? What do you think will happen? Those great scholars will definitely condemn you in speech and in writing. Now that you've made it, they will only be grateful and think that you're a great talent. But if word gets out that you have fine wine here in the future, have you thought about the consequences? Li Shimin instilled the advantages and disadvantages of it over and over again. Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He really didn't think about this matter. The thing that came to Zhang Feng's mind the most was that if he could bring out this fine wine, his reputation would soar. Moreover, he would have the same reputation as wine ancestor Du Kong. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little excited. Lao Li, tell me, does this wine have any other abilities? Li Shimin heard this and knew that Zhang Feng was on the right track. He hurriedly put on a straight face and said, "Look at you. Where's your usual wisdom? Where's your usual shrewdness? Why did you forget an important thing?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. What thing? Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder with a smile and said, "You forgot your advantage, that is, this wine is unique. Last time, I even gave this wine to Lord Changsun. I even heard that His Majesty was full of praise for your wine. Do you know what this means?" Zhang Feng shook his head in a daze. "This means that once you plan to make this fine wine thoroughly, the emperor will be very happy. Maybe he will even summon you to the palace in an instant." Zhang Feng was completely confused. He also became inexplicably excited. Li Shimin took the opportunity to say, "Think about wine god Du Kong. This time, your wine will definitely be regarded as the national wine of the Tang dynasty." Buzz. Chapter 726. Zhang Feng was a little excited. He really didn't expect that a little white wine could actually cause such a big reaction. It surpassed wine sage Du Kong. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's heart was beating wildly. Then Zhang Feng looked around, grabbed Li Shimin's hand, and went into the house. As he walked, he shouted, "Zhu Zi's mother, hurry up and prepare some dishes for me. I want pork kidneys." Li Shimin looked at all this with a smile. He didn't stop Zhang Feng and just let him go into the house. For the first time, Li Shimin showed off in front of Zhang Feng. Li Shimin couldn't help but laugh wildly in his heart. As soon as they entered the house, Zhang Feng closed the door tightly. Then, he took out a jar of wine covered in dust from under the bed and sighed, "Lao Li, this is the last jar of wine that I deliberately collected. Whether it's in the pub, on the mountain or at the foot of the mountain, this is the last jar." When Li Shimin heard this, his eyes couldn't help but light up. "Lao Li, now tell me, what are the benefits of this national wine?" As soon as Zhang Feng sat down and poured a bowl of wine for Li Shimin, he couldn't wait to ask. Li Shimin wasn't in a hurry. He drank a mouthful of wine happily and said, "The so-called national wine is specially provided by the royal family. Once this thing is pasted on, then your wine, even if it's inferior wine on the street, will instantly rise in status. Something that costs 1 copper coin can instantly skyrocket to 100 copper coins per caddy. You understand this, right?" How could Zhang Feng not understand? This was the F*King brand effect. But what he didn't know was that this actually existed during the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng continued to ask, "What other benefits are there?" "What benefits?" Li Shimin smiled. "You have to know that once this thing appears in the royal family, let alone in the Tang dynasty, even if this wine is sold to other countries, this wine will not be sold at this price. You also know that your wine is sweet and strong." When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes instantly widened like copper coins. He said, "I understand. You mean, you want to directly sell this wine to the Turks, Persia, and other places, and use this wine to become the fourth largest export brand of the Tang dynasty? Li Shimin was a little confused. It's not about brands. Now, the tea leaves, silk, and porcelain of the Tang dynasty have basically become common commercial products. Every year, the Tang dynasty will buy a large amount of wine from Persia and other places, as well as a kind of Turk's horse milk wine, Tubo's Highland barley wine, and the wine of the Tang dynasty is called tragic. Li Shimin sighed and said, wine has always been an indispensable thing in life. Think about it, if the Tang dynasty and the Turks go to war, the trade route will inevitably pass through the Turks. At this time, the Turks are at a disadvantage because the Tang dynasty exchanged food for horses. Once the war starts, if they put something in the wine, Zhang Feng understood. He completely understood Li Shimin's ambition. He wanted to completely cut off the wine of the Turks and other countries, then replace Zhang Feng's wine, and then dump it to them. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's mind became active. Just now, he was too excited and forgot a lot of things. At this time, when Li Shimin said it, he immediately understood. He couldn't help but be excited. Old Li, I'll leave this matter to you. I'll write you a letter later, and you can go and find the old elementary scholar yourself. But this thing, please don't tell anyone. When it's time to make the wine, come and find me. I'll give you something. Take it and put it in the distiller's grains. How about 3 days later? Li Shimin's eyes twinkled. But he also knew that everyone had something they wanted to keep. If Zhang Feng walked out of the corner, the loss would outweigh the gain. Li Shimin couldn't help but no longer insist. All right, since that's the case, it's settled then. Just as Li Shimin was talking, Zhu Zi's mother gently knocked on the door. Zhang Feng took the dishes and started eating with Li Shimin. While eating, Zhang Feng talked about the structure of the cement and so on in an exaggerated manner. Li Shimin was also shocked by Zhang Feng's description of the reinforced concrete. Fengzi, you said that the house can be built dozens of feet high? How is this possible? Even in books, they wouldn't dare to write like this. Where did you learn all this from? Zhang Feng definitely wouldn't tell him these things. Li Shimin couldn't help but be tempted when he thought of the project in Luozhou. Fengzi, this cement you mentioned, can it be produced in large quantities now? Zhang Feng shook his head and sighed. Not at the moment. After all, we have to wait until the academy is completely built before we can see the results of the cement. For now, we only know that its adhesion is very good. As for its resistance to pressure, I don't know. Li Shimin's figure instantly vanished, and he said, then, you have to take good care of this thing. If this thing of yours appears in the future, then it'll be able to make a name for White Deer Academy. Just like this braised meat and this fine wine. Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard about the fine wine. Li Shimin saw that the situation wasn't right and hurriedly said, today's matter is settled. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first. As he spoke, he didn't wait for Zhang Feng to reply and hurriedly left. Zhang Feng was left sitting there in a daze. When Li Shimin was about to disappear from sight, Zhang Feng suddenly came to his senses. He rushed out of the door and shouted angrily, Lao Li, you're not kind. You actually tricked me. Chapter 727. But at this time, Li Shimin had already run away. Even if he heard it, it was not easy for him to get the wine from Zhang Feng. How could he spit it out? He could imagine that if he met someone like King Zhenla, once he took out such a good thing, he would gain a lot of face. What was this? This was the face of the Tang dynasty. On the mountain, Zhang Feng's roar instantly attracted everyone's attention. Wei Shuyu and the others, who had been paying attention to this place for a long time, hurried over and stared at Zhang Feng curiously. Then, they looked at the messy cups and plates on his table and the empty jar of wine. Qing Chumo was unhappy. Fengzi, look at you. We are such good brothers and you still want to hide the good wine? However, Li Qingxian and Du Go were quite close to Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng's uncomfortable face, he asked, Fengzi, what happened with my father just now? When Zhang Feng heard this, he wanted to cry. He grabbed Li Qingxian's arm and roared with grief and indignation, I've been tricked by your father. Zhang Feng's roar directly confused the 5 people. Li Qingxian hurriedly asked, "What's going on? We saw from afar just now. Didn't you two exaggerate? What's going on now? What's wrong? Go back and ask your father." "I'm crying, brother. This is the only thing I can leave for my son. Your father won't even let this go. He even set me up. Tell me, where can I go to explain my reasoning?" When Li Qingxian and the others heard this, they finally understood why Zhang Feng was like this. If it were someone else, they would really dare to help Zhang Feng get back at him. But who was that person? He was the emperor of the dynasty. Even if they were given 100 guts, they wouldn't dare to ask the emperor for justice. Wasn't this tantamount to courting death? They hurriedly comforted Zhang Feng. "Fengzi, look, isn't this for your sake? You like to hide everything. Look at such good things. Even we don't dare to eat and drink too much. We're worried that we'll drink it all one day. Tai Niu is right. Look, since we've known each other until now, other than the ones you gave away, how much of it has been drunk by us? This won't do. My father, my relatives, and servants have long been drooling over this wine. You can't blame Li Gan's father. Think about the difficulties of doing business. If he knows that you have good wine at home, do you think he should give it away or not? If you give it away, there are only a few jars. If you don't give it away, won't you be offending them? Fengzi, 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 Fengzi. Just say that you're begging Ouyang Xiu. If you directly give him a cart of wine, believe it or not, when he finishes the entire cart of wine, you don't need to say anything, he will naturally come to you and beg you to be his teacher. Do you even need to go through so much trouble to beg him?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he was even more confused. But when he thought about it, he instantly exploded. At the end of the day, you're all in cahoots. So this isn't your thing, right? Get the F***ck out of here and get to work. What are you all standing here for? Don't you need to eat? When they heard this, they knew that Zhang Feng was in a fit of anger. They shrunk their necks and hurriedly left. Although Zhang Feng was a little annoyed at being tricked, Lao Li and the others were right about one thing. This wine was bound to be released. It was only a matter of time and the impact it would cause. If it was released together with the braised meat now, the impact would be maximized. Once the people accepted the braised meat and the simple dishes he made, the matter of the wine would be just as Li Gan and the others had said. Everyone had relatives. Once the news slowly spread, it would be meaningless to come out at that time. When he thought of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh again. Sigh. Damn it, I was too careless. But fortunately, the last core technique was still in his hands. As long as this thing wasn't leaked, even if the winemaking technique was leaked, they wouldn't be able to brew this wine. However, just when Zhang Feng understood the whole situation, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Li Shimin, who was leisurely sitting in the sedan chair and happily thinking about how Zhang Feng would fly into a rage, received a piece of news that made him extremely angry. Originally, he had come out this time to take a look at the school. On one hand, he wanted to see how the school was doing. On the other hand, he wanted to see what had happened to Zhang Feng. He had been hearing about White Deer College for the past 2 days, so he wanted to take a look. But he didn't expect that there would be an unexpected surprise. This could not help but make Li Shimin ecstatic. But just when he was still immersed in his excitement, he heard something that he didn't want to hear. "Master Li, something happened. I'm really asking for help." Chapter 728. Chang and Drill Ground. It was originally set up in a secluded valley not far from the Shirley Slope. But after Zhang Feng went up Shao Mountain, Li Shimin set up the Chang and garrison camp between Chang and Shao Mountain. This camp not only included the garrison, but also included the training of the descendants of the various officials in Chang'an, as well as the training of the imperial guards and city guards. But a few days ago, after Yuqi Gong received Zhang Feng's training manual, the lazy atmosphere in the camp suddenly became terrifying. Before this, everyone used the status of their families to say that they were here to train, but in reality, they were just here to stay for a period of time. After that, they could go back and do whatever they wanted. But this Yuchi god of plague got a bunch of wood from somewhere and the three army gods appeared in the camp at the same time. That wasn't the most terrifying thing. In these 3 days, the 3 demon kings got a bunch of stones and bamboo baskets from somewhere. At that time, everyone was still squatting in the corner, wondering what they were going to do. But 3 days later, which was last night, their end was here. Every one of them had to carry a 30-gene load and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. If you didn't finish running, you wouldn't be given food. That was how willful and awesome you were. If you dared to object, you would die. At this time, the sun in the sky was scorching hot. Although they had been running all morning, they didn't dare to complain at all. Because the emperor was coming to inspect today. If the emperor were to see them being so lazy, the 3 demon kings might really break their legs. However, it had already been more than 2 hours. They had been running for more than 2 hours. The emperor wasn't here yet. Everyone was in despair. They were terrified. They thought the 3 demon kings at the gate were targeting them. In contrast to the soldiers' fear, Yuchi Gong and the other 2 looked at the gate and couldn't help but be puzzled. Yuchi Gong looked at Qin Xiong suspiciously and asked, "Shubao, are you sure the emperor said he would come today?" Qing Yaojin stroked his beard and looked at White Deer College in the shadows of Shao Mountain. Did he go to Feng Zi's place? It should be, right? Otherwise, His Majesty would have arrived long ago. The 3 of them looked in the direction of Shao Mountain and then looked behind them at the soldiers who were climbing, running, and jumping on various horizontal bars, rope ladders, or under nets. They could not help but sigh. Feng Zi, you really have a way. Otherwise, I don't know how useless these bastards would be now. Qing Yaojin laughed, and then roared, "It's only been 2 hours, you can't take it anymore? Are you all cowards? Rise for me, Lao Tzu. If anyone dares to slack off, regardless of whether His Majesty comes or not, Lao Tzu will record your every move in detail. When the time comes, we'll let your Lao Tzu see what kind of playthings you are." Everyone, who was already exhausted, almost fainted when they heard this. Damn it. What kind of people were they? Do you have to tell your family about such a small matter? How are we supposed to live? Although everyone was very tired, they could not help but get angry when they heard that everything would be recorded. They gritted their teeth and worked hard again. Qing Yaojin and the other 2 looked into the distance and then looked at the sun in the sky. He smacked his lips and said, "I just heard that Zhang Feng is stirring up trouble on the mountain again. I don't know what those bastards are doing. I don't know what happened to the 300,000 pigs yesterday. Until now, no one has come to say anything, Dad." Just as the 3 of them were muttering, Qing Chumo rode his mule and galloped over from afar. The 3 of them immediately looked over when they heard the word Dad. Qing Yaojin glared at him. There is no father and son in the army. This is the rule. Did you King feed a dog? Carry 60 gene of weight for Lao Tzu and run 3 laps around Shao Mountain. He is not allowed to come back until he finishes. Qing Chumo, who was on the back of the mule, heard this. His eyes widened and he fell off the back of the mule. His expression changed greatly as he shouted, "Dad! General Qing, I am here to deliver food to the 3 of you under the orders of Master." Qing Yaojin heard this and snorted. When Qing Chumo came to his side, he asked, "Deliver food to the door? Didn't the Crown Prince bring 300,000 pigs up the mountain in the past? You should all know about this." Qing Chumo grinned and smiled foolishly. At the same time, he hurriedly unloaded the 2 wooden buckets on the back of the mule and opened the lids in front of the 3 of them. Instantly, a strong smell of meat wafted out, causing the 3 of them to stare so hard that their eyes almost popped out. Qing Yaojin did not even care about his son. He grabbed a piece of meat and started chewing. How could Yuchi Gong and the other 2 hold back? When they saw the gravy at the corner of Qing Yaojin's mouth, they also picked up a piece of meat and started chewing. It was as if Qing Chumo had long forgotten that he was good at the army. When the three of them were eating happily, Qing Yaojin wiped his mouth and shouted angrily again, "Damn it, it's a pity that we can't drink alcohol in the army. Otherwise, if we could pair it with Feng Zi's wine, that would be truly enjoyable. Alright, why don't we go up the mountain tomorrow to find him?" Yuqigong finished a pig's ear and did not even bother wiping his mouth. He grabbed a piece of pig's liver and took a bite. As if he felt that the taste was not good enough, he spat it out and picked up another pig's ear. The three of them walked into the military camp as they ate. At this time, Yuqigong asked, "Kid, did you see His Majesty on the way?" Oh. I saw him. He went back and swindled Feng Zi's secret winemaking recipe from the mountain and ran away. Chapter 729. Prince Junla, Shiva, is here. Prince Junla, Shiva, is here. The moment Xiao Gizi and the guards at the entrance of the political announcement hall, the officials in the court finally reacted. They couldn't help but be shocked. Prince Junla is here? And it's actually a prince? Could it be that His Majesty insisted on fighting? Amidst the confusion of the crowd, a handsome youth wearing a strange green robe with golden edges slowly walked into the political announcement hall. Behind him were two old men with white beards. Each of them held a yellow rosewood tray that was tightly covered by a red cloth. No one knew what was hidden inside. However, from the bulging part, everyone could faintly feel that this thing was extraordinary. As soon as Prince Junla entered the political announcement hall with two people, he respectfully put his right hand on his chest and saluted. "Prince Junla, Shiva, is here to greet His Majesty the Tang Emperors." Li Shimin waved his sleeve, "Rise." While speaking, Shiva raised his head, took a tray from an old man behind him, and said, "This is a letter of credence written by my father to His Majesty the Tang Emperors. I hope His Majesty the Tang Emperors can take a look." Then, Xiao Gizi walked down the hall, checked the letter, and carefully presented it to Li Shimin. This was the second letter Prince Junla sent to him. Yesterday, he received a letter from an envoy, but when he returned to the palace, he learned that Prince Junla had come. It seemed that Junla was really at the end of his rope. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent so many envoys this time and even let Prince Junla come in person. Prince Junla was equivalent to the crown prince, so it was conceivable that the crown prince would come in person. Sure enough. After Li Shimin opened the letter of credence, the contents of the letter had changed from the previous request to a plea. Li Shimin took a deep breath and asked without changing his expression, "I already know about this matter, but you also know the current situation of the Tang dynasty. Therefore, I have to think about it carefully before I can restore you." Upon hearing this, Shiva bowed and said, "Many thanks for your Majesty's benevolence and kindness. This humble one came here with the intention of my imperial father. My imperial father said that as long as your Majesty sends out troops, I will do my best to gather enough military supplies for the Tang dynasty. Not only that, I will also deduct 30% of the profits from the past trade. In the future, I, Junla, am also willing to sign a permanent vassal state agreement with the Tang dynasty and pay tribute every year." Hearing this, only then did everyone in the court become aghast. Permanent vassal state? Deducting 30% of the profits from all the past trade to the Tang dynasty? The poisonous salt was originally given to the Tang dynasty for free. In exchange, the Tang dynasty only needed to give them 10 caddies of poisonous salt. But in addition, there were other things, such as seafood, spices, fruits, and so on, which had a lot to do with. Since the establishment of trade and commerce with Junla, many people in the imperial court had participated in it. Some people even made a lot of money because of it. Although everyone was worried before, this business only affected the current situation. It would recover one day. But it was different now. If the emperor agreed to help Junla, and according to the emperor's current intention, it seemed that he had long wanted to help Junla. Once he sent out troops, then, their interests would be maximized. Li Shimin also fell silent at this time. He slowly swept his gaze across the faces of the ministers in the court before slowly saying, "We know what you have said. However, you also know the current situation. If we blindly send out troops, what kind of consequences will there be? Therefore, we will give you an answer within 3 days. While speaking, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Send an order to all the government troops in South Jiandao, Lingnan, to be ready." Court dismissed. In Li Shimin's indifferent voice. Everyone had to suppress the doubts in their hearts and respectfully send Li Shimin off. After everyone left, Shiva glanced at the direction where Li Shimin left, and then winked at the 2 people behind him. He hurriedly left the political announcement hall and went to the Honglu temple. In addition to this matter, he came to the Tang dynasty this time for another matter. That was to visit Zhang Feng. When he was in Zhenla, he heard that Zhang Feng seemed to have opened an academy in the Tang dynasty to recruit talents from all over the world. The purpose of his visit this time was to find Zhang Feng. As for this matter, he was confident that as long as the Tang emperors were not fools, they would definitely send out troops. And he had shown his sincerity. He did not believe that the people of the Tang dynasty would not agree. As soon as he left the political announcement hall, Shiva told the 2 people behind him, "You 2 go back to the Honglu temple first. I'll go out for a while." An elder of the 2 asked worriedly, "Prince, it's not too late to go after you have a definite answer. After all, this is a big deal." Shiva was unmoved. He just used his eyes to signal the ministers who had just left the political announcement hall and said, "Look at their faces and think about what His Majesty the Tang emperors just said. You'll understand." While speaking, Shiva hurriedly followed the carriage that was picking up the ministers and disappeared from the sight of the 2 envoys. Chapter 730. In the Imperial Study. Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others had been waiting here for a long time. After a while, Li Shimin hurried over. After seeing them, Li Shimin directly asked, "You all heard what Prince Zhenla said just now, right? Do you think we should send the troops or not?" Yu Qigong hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, we must send the troops. If we don't, how will the countries that have submitted to the Tang dynasty see us? How will the other countries treat us? The salt we use now is basically used by all the people. If we don't send the troops, then the consequences, and the current situation is not a problem of whether to send the troops or not. The biggest problem is the Tang dynasty's attitude towards this matter." Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin, and Qin Xiong spoke one after another. In any case, what they meant was that they must send the troops, and they had no choice but to send the troops. And when the 3 of them finished speaking, Fang Xianling said, "The current situation is that the Tang dynasty can only send 50,000 troops, and 50,000? That's enough." Yu Qigong waved his hand and interrupted Fang Xianling. He looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, give me 50,000. If Zhenla is really in charge of the provisions this time, then this old general has a way to delay the war for 10 days. These 10 days are enough for this old general to send the news to the palace. At that time, Your Majesty will mobilize the troops of the various prefectures to help. This old general will definitely be able to kill all 300,000 Indian soldiers." This was the source of Yu Qigong's confidence. Although the other side had 300,000 people. But who was he? He had fought countless battles, big and small. If he could meet that brat before he left, he could learn a thing or 2 about military tactics from him. It would be best if he could get some impenetrable shields and armor, or a spear that could pierce through anything. Then, he would have the guts to lead these 50,000 men to clash with the Indian army. The crux of the matter was Zhang Feng. Li Shimin was thinking the same thing. After all, at this time, he also knew the seriousness of the matter. Once he broke his promise, let alone Zhenla, the Tang dynasty would lose the credibility of the entire business world. At that time, who would dare to do business with them? Therefore, the number of troops sent out at this time must not be small. Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui wanted to say something, but in the end, they swallowed their words. At this moment, they were also aware of the situation. Li Shimin saw that no one was speaking. He said, "Then, gather all the generals. I want to see your military plans before tonight." As he spoke, Li Shimin's expression became slightly better, and he left. Farewell, your majesty. After they sent off Li Shimin, Du Ruhui stopped Yuchi Gong and said, General Yuchi, this time the army is of great importance. Even if the Tang dynasty added the government soldiers, how many people can we send out? Yuchi Gong rolled his eyes and said, What do you mean, General Du? What do I mean? Old man, let me ask you. You should know that this matter with Zhenla is probably a test by Tubo and India against the Tang dynasty. Are you so sure that 50,000 people can fight against 300,000 soldiers? What if they fail? Won't the Tang dynasty lose face? Yuchi Gong finally understood Du Ruhui's meaning. He glanced at the expressions of Fang Xianling, Wei Zheng, and Zhang Sun. Yuchi Gong and the other two laughed. Qing Yaojin patted Zhang Sun Wuji on the shoulder and said, Brother, don't worry about this. Do you still remember the invincible spear that Fengzi once said? Wei Zheng and the others heard this and couldn't help but become angrier. The civil engineering on Fengzi's mountain hasn't finished yet. Do you think Fengzi has the time to do that? Don't you think about it? Now that you've blindly told the emperor this, old man, let's see how you deal with this. Prime Minister Wei, don't worry. Qin Xiong cupped his hands and said, Have you heard that little brother Zhang Feng has a military knowledge that is more magical than Sun Tzu's art of war? Hearing this, the expressions of Zhang Sun Wuji and the others instantly froze. They did know about this. But they didn't know that this thing had become a stabilizing force for someone like Yuchi Gong. What on earth was this so-called military knowledge? After the emperor and Qing Yaojin learned about this matter, they also knew about what happened in the Cheng and garrison camp. After all, some of their sons were there, and most importantly, their sons were basically by Zhang Feng's side. How could they not know? It was just that they always felt that what Zhang Feng said was just a battle of words. But they didn't expect Yuchi Gong to say such things at this time. However, Yuchi Gong didn't explain much. As soon as the three of them left the imperial city, they cupped their hands and said to Fang Xianling and the others, I'll go back to the camp first. Please go and give the order to gather quickly. How about we discuss this matter in my mansion tonight? Wei Zheng and the others couldn't say anything but cupped their hands. Okay. Chapter 731. The few of them hurriedly returned to their respective departments, from the military department, to the Ministry of Works, to the Ministry of Appointments, and so on. Then, a memorial that was stamped with seals appeared on Li Shimin's desk. Li Shimin took a look and stamped it. Then, an order to summon the army was sent out of the palace. It began to spread from Cheng and city. All the disciples of the military families or the families of military families had to report back to the military ministry after seeing this edict. And at this time, it was the same on Mount Shao. A large number of people received this edict, and the first to leave was the group of veterans of the Rejoice House. After excitedly saying goodbye to Zhang Feng, their eyes showed the long-lost excitement, but there was also a trace of loneliness. No one knew if the war would be gone forever. However, the pride of soldiers in their bones could only be comforted in their dreams at night. Most people thought they were a group of Rakshasa ghosts, but who knew that the battlefield was both love and hate for them? They loved it because they could only experience their value on the battlefield. In Cheng and city, except for Zhang Feng, who did not look at them with disdain. However, on the battlefield, they could express their dissatisfaction and anger as they wished. They hated it because this might be an eternal farewell, or they would linger on with the memories of their brothers that they could never forget. Zhang Feng looked at these people and was a little confused. He quietly pulled Li Qian aside and asked, What's going on? Could it be that Tufan had attacked? Why did he suddenly issue an edict? Li Qingxian patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and sighed. Brother, I guess I'll also go to the battlefield. Iron Bull and the others may also go. If only it was Tubo. This time, it's Shenla. Do you remember Prince Shenla who was fooled by you? This time, he brought news. I heard that Jinla was invaded by 300,000 Indian troops, and most of the trade route you designed has now fallen into the hands of the Indians. So, you understand. At this time, Qing Chimo, Wei Shuyu, and the others arrived at Zhang Feng's door. They patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, "Brother, take care. You know our business in Jinla. We have to go up." So, Zhang Feng was a little confused. "Didn't you say that only those who practice martial arts can go? Could it be that they've issued another recruitment order?" When they heard this, they were shocked. Li Qingxian hurriedly explained, "That's not it. We just said that we might go back." This time, it was father who sent a message, telling us to go home and discuss countermeasures. Who knows, we might really have to part ways this time. Li Qingxian naturally wasn't going to the battlefield, but Qing Chimo was different. Who was his father? Zhang Sunchong and Wei Shuyu had long wanted to go to the battlefield. Now that they had received the imperial edict, how could they sit still? He also wanted to go to the front line to take a look. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded by this sudden event. He was already used to these guys nagging at him for no reason, but suddenly so many people left, he felt so unnatural. "Can we not go?" Zhang Feng asked in a strange tone. Qing Chimo glared at Zhang Feng. "We can't go just because you say so. Then what about the 300,000 Indian troops? The point is that Lao Tzu doesn't want to go either. Let's go." Qing Chimo's eyes were red. He waved his hand and was about to leave. Li Qingxian, "Do go," and the others were fine. They said goodbye to Zhang Feng and prepared to leave. Zhang Feng was silent. But after a while, Zhang Feng looked at the door and shouted, "Come back! Come back! Lao Tzu has a way." The few of them stopped in their tracks. Zhang Feng could not help but wonder if these guys were really going to go down the mountain to join the army or do something else. But all of this was not important. Everything on the mountain, whether it was the food factory, the paper mill, or everything else on the mountain, if these bastards left, wouldn't he become a commander without an army? Zhang Feng looked at the strange expressions on the few of them and sighed. "Whether you are trying to trick me or not, Lao Tzu needs you now. So, I will think of a way for you." "Are you sure you have a way?" Li Qingxian was a little hesitant. But there was also something strange. If Zhang Feng could really create an impenetrable shield in a short time, then it would really be solved. After thinking about it, Li Qingxian felt that it was impossible. Not to mention other things, how long would it take to make a shield out of stubborn iron? How many could he make in such a short time? But Li Qingxian still asked, "Feng Zi, do you have a way?" Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Lying back on the recliner, he thought for a while and said, "Are you talking about the Indian invasion of Jinla? I remember when Tubo's rebellion broke out, I heard your father talk about this. Did you not think that these two things might be the same thing? In other words, the Indian invasion of Jinla this time might have been premeditated by Tubo." Chapter 732. As Zhang Feng's voice fell, Li Qingxian's face turned pale. Li Qingxian's face alternated between green and white. The smile on his face was still frozen as he stared at Zhang Feng. After staring for a moment, his eyes seemed to be sore as he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. This matter was too big. No one thought about Tubo's position. As for the disappearance of 100,000 Turkic elites, no one had expected it. However, now that Zhang Feng said this, Li Qingxian instantly thought of a terrifying possibility. The 100,000 Turkic people might not have disappeared, but they had secretly sneaked into India without anyone knowing. Although this was only a guess, it made Li Qingxian feel that there was a conspiracy behind it. Suddenly, Li Qingxian's eyes narrowed. "Fengzi, you mean to say that the missing 100,000 Turkic soldiers have already infiltrated India, and at the same time, instigated internal strife in Tibet, as well as the most genuine war with Latvia? Their intention is to divide the Great Tang army?" Qing Chimo and the others could not help but be shocked when they heard this. However, when Li Qingxian finished speaking and looked at Zhang Feng, he realized that Zhang Feng was staring at him with his mouth agape. "Li Qingxian, how did you know? Who told you this?" Zhang Feng really did not know about this matter. At this moment, Li Qingxian saw that he was going off topic and hurriedly said, "Well, when I went down the mountain last time, didn't I coincidentally meet Lord Zhangsun in my residence to discuss the trade route in Tubo with my father?" At that time, Lord Zhangsun even praised you. That's right, don't change the topic. When Zhang Feng heard this, he interrupted Li Qingxian's chatter. He frowned and fell into deep thought. The recliner under his butt was squeaking non-stop. After a while, Zhang Feng's toes touched the floor and the squeaking sound disappeared instantly. If the Turks really did dispatch 100,000 people, then this matter will be troublesome. In other words, the Turks are setting up a huge net, waiting for the soldiers of the Tang dynasty to fall into it. When Li Qingxian heard this, his expression involuntarily changed. Do you mean that the current matter of Tubo and Jinla is all a conspiracy of India against the Tang dynasty? If that's the case, his real intention is to invade the Tang dynasty? Li Qingxian was a little flustered. The 100,000 soldiers who had set off for Tubo were completely unaware of this matter. Furthermore, based on the current situation, it was indeed a little interesting. The 100,000 Turkic soldiers seemed to have suddenly vanished. Combined with the current situation, there was a high chance that they had been hiding in India and Tubo for some time, and many of them had even entered Jinla. Zhang Feng thought for a while and nodded. That's right. Think about it. If you were given a sandbox of 100,000 people, and there were hundreds of thousands of hungry people behind you, but the people next to you were well-fed and warm all day long, what would you do? Now, think about how you should use this sandbox. If your neighbor's power is as strong as yours, what would you do to feed the people behind you? Li Qingxian was a little confused. However, Qing Chimo instantly understood. After all, he had played with sandboxes a lot. Fengzi, do you mean that this matter of Tubo and Jinla is a Turkic action against the Tang dynasty? And their purpose is to take down the Tang dynasty? Or they want to use this method to fight against the Tang dynasty? Zhang Feng nodded fiercely. At this time, he was thinking about the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks next year, which was buried deep in his memory. In the third year of Jingguan, the war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks broke out. In this battle, Zhang Feng had thought that by nibbling away at the Turks would be able to achieve a complete victory. But now, it seemed that the Turks were no fools. They had also understood the Great Tang's intentions. It seemed that India's sudden dispatch of troops was not without purpose. At this time, if they divided the troops, it seemed that they would fall into the Turks' trap. At that time, the garrison of Longyu Road and the defense of Tubo and other places would be lax. The Turks' army might catch them off guard. At that time, even if the people sent by the Tang dynasty wanted to come back to help, it would be too late. Li Qingxian and the others also understood at this time. Their faces were pale. However, after understanding all this, Zhang Feng was not in a hurry. Looking at Li Qingxian and the others, he said, "Don't be anxious about this matter. Soldiers will be deployed, but not to Jinla. All of your properties will be saved. Now, you guys just have to obediently wear it for me. If you don't manage the academy well, you won't graduate. If you dare to run away, even if you beg me in the future, don't think of taking a step into the academy." In the face of Zhang Feng's threat, Li Qingxian automatically ignored it. Instead, he asked, "Do you mean that we won't save Jinla? But now I heard that Prince Jinla has come to the Tang dynasty." Zhang Feng's interest was piqued and he asked, "Does he have the same idea as Tufan? As long as the Tang dynasty sends troops, they will provide the provisions?" Hearing this, Li Qingxian, Qing Chimo, Zhang Sun and the others looked at each other and then nodded. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said with a smile, "Then don't worry. As long as our emperor is not a fool, he will not send troops this time. And how can there be such a good thing in the world? Think about it. Who doesn't lack food? But why do they have to dig out so much military provisions from their teeth?" Chapter 733. Giddy up. Giddy up. Giddy up. On the mountain path of Shao Mountain, 5 fine horses were galloping. Along the way, when people saw these 5 fine horses, they wanted to scold them. However, when they saw the 5 masters riding on them, they immediately swallowed the words they wanted to scold in their hearts. But at the same time, they were also shocked. Although the five lords said that the Devil King's temperament had improved a lot after entering Shao Mountain, why was it still the same as before? Why were they so careless? I heard that when it was getting dark yesterday, Jinla's people came. After Li Qingxian and the other masters left, the crowd couldn't help whispering. I heard that the White Harry from Tinju is going to attack Jinla. What does that have to do with us? Hey! Who said it has nothing to do with us? Do you still want to eat salt? Where do you think the salt we eat now comes from? It's all made by our Dean. And I also heard an interesting story. Before our Dean came to Shao Mountain and made a fortune, didn't he have a tavern in Chang'an City? That day, Prince Jinla and Princess Jinla went to the tavern and met our Dean. They were originally covered with jewels, but when they came out, do you know what they became? The crowd couldn't help but be interested. That person carried a basket of bricks on his back and said, "Those two idiots were tricked by our Dean. Other than the clothes on their bodies, they don't have anything left." Hiss. Is that true? Yes. So what's the purpose of Jinla's people coming this time? Are they sending treasures to our Dean again? Who knows? But looking at the five masters' actions, maybe Jinla is in trouble this time. Didn't you see that the edict was issued this morning? The group of veterans of the Enla house went down the mountain like crazy. What? Is something really going to happen? Hiss. On the other side, Li Qingxian waved his horsewhip and rushed all the way to Chang'an City, and then rushed all the way to the Imperial City. It was hard not to attract attention along the way. Everyone couldn't help but think of Jin La's visit yesterday and today's edict. Chang'an City could not help but become jittery again. Li Qingxian and the others galloped, dismounting outside Taiji Palace. Holding the Crown Prince's token, they entered the imperial study under the shocked gazes of the Golden Guards. Li Shimin had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Li Qingxian and the others enter, he waved his hand, indicating Qing Chumo and the others to leave. Only then did he ask, "Why are you so alarmed? Zhen only asked you to come back and participate in General Cheng and the others' discussion on this expedition to Jinla. Why are you acting so exaggeratedly?" Li Qingxian was greatly alarmed when he heard this and hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, this son came precisely for this matter." Li Shimin raised his eyebrows. Did Feng Zi say something shocking again? Feng Zi said that this is a scheme of the Turks. When Li Shimin heard this, the indifferent expression on his face suddenly changed. He hurriedly asked, "Speak." When he learned that Li Qingxian and the others had broken into the Imperial City, he had already. He thought of many possibilities, but he once again underestimated Zhang Feng's intelligence. He had actually spoken of the matter that Li Shimin was most worried about. Moreover, Zhang Feng had known nothing about the 100,000 Turks. There was a high chance that these brats had only revealed it in a moment of desperation. In a short moment, he was able to overlook the entire situation and hit the key points. This made Li Shimin somewhat believe Li Qingxian's words. Imperial Father, Feng Zi said that the Tubo incident, as well as the Jinla and India incident, were all manipulated by the Turks. They had long been sure that our Tang dynasty would send troops to rescue Jinla. Think about it, twice, it was them who provided the provisions. This is not normal. When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but think of this strange matter that made his eyelids twitch. He had always felt that something was wrong. However, he could not figure out why he gave Yuqi Gong and the others a day to discuss this matter. But now, Li Shimin was instantly enlightened by Li Qingxian's words. No wonder I have been thinking that since they have provisions for 100,000 people, they may not be unable to quell the rebellion. Why did they ask our Tang dynasty to send troops? It turns out that the Turks have long turned into Tubo rebels, and then used the old tricks of the Tang dynasty to promote Tubo. From the military and rumors, they mistakenly thought that this matter was serious. That's why they came to ask the Tang dynasty for help in such a panic. I see. I understand now. Li Shimin slammed his fist on the table, instantly startling the four people waiting at the door. Li Shimin did not care so much. He hurriedly walked down from the dragon throne and asked, is what you said true? But when he said this, Li Shimin did not feel that it was inappropriate. After all, this matter was too big, so big that Li Shimin felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Li Qingxian nodded heavily. Your son has thought about this matter for a long time and also feels that it is very strange. Imperial father, look. While speaking, Li Qingxian pointed at the map on the wall of the imperial study and said, this is the location of our Tang dynasty, and the 100,000 troops were gathered in Yuzhou. That is to say, Tuli Khan and Xieli are bound to meet. Otherwise, how could the 100,000 troops enter that good fox Xieli's territory so easily? Moreover, we were too ruthless to the Turks some time ago, and the Turks were in internal strife at that time. Do you still hear about the Turks' internal strife now? Li Shimin's expression changed when he heard that. Li Qingxian continued, first, Tubo broke out in internal strife, and then Tuli mobilized 100,000 elite troops. After that, Tubo asked for help, and then India suddenly sent troops. But these 100,000 elite Turks did not move at all. This. Chapter 734. At this moment, Li Qingxian didn't need to say anything. Li Shimin had long understood. If all of this wasn't a conspiracy of the Turks, then it would be strange. Li Shimin put his hands behind his back and walked in front of the map. After a long time, he asked, did Feng Zi say what we should do? He said that Imperial Father was already mentally prepared, Li Qingxian said with a headache. Hearing this, Li Shimin's expression froze. Then, he couldn't help but sigh. This Feng Zi really gave me a difficult problem. I almost had to send troops. Li Qingxian thought for a while and said, however, Feng Zi seems to mean that the troops will be sent, but not to Jinla. Not to Jinla? Then where to? Li Shimin stared at the map. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't figure it out. At present, the best way was to immediately send troops and then enter Jinla to suppress India. Otherwise, when the troops arrived, everything would be over. But this kid said that he wouldn't go to Jinla. Then, thinking of the request that Zhang Feng asked Li Qingxian to convey to Jinla and Tubo, Li Shimin pointed at the map and asked in surprise, does Feng Zi mean that Jinla's request for troops this time was completely due to the Turks and Indians deliberately leaking the news? What is their purpose? Could it be for, come, quickly summon Yuqi Gong, Qing Yao Jin, and Qin Xiong into the palace? Even if the horses run to death, I want to see them within a quarter of an hour. Qing Chumo and the others who were kneeling outside the door heard this and felt their heads explode. They secretly looked back at the deep palace courtyard and couldn't help but be speechless. Did they really want the horses to run to death? Such a long distance, even if a horse galloped all the way, it would still take an hour. It seemed that the matter this time was really serious. Dong, bang, woo. Not long after Li Shimin's voice was transmitted, the news instantly reached the drum tower. After receiving the name, the drum tower heavily beat the drum 3 times. After hearing the 3 drum beats, the guards on the city wall of Zhuke Gate were as if they were facing a great enemy. An old general who understood the meaning of the drum beat personally took the hammer in the guard's hand and slammed it on a bronze gong the size of a millstone. In an instant, a piercing sound of the gong melodiously spread from the tower of Zhuke Gate. The sound of the gong was very subtle. After the first knock, the bell rang twice in a row, and then there was no more sound. After the second sound of the gong, a long and melodious sound of a horn sounded from the direction of the Chang and military camp, that is, the gate of Chang and City. This was a kind of temptation that no one else could understand, but only the generals in the army could. This was the command. It meant that the emperor had encountered an extremely serious matter. No matter what he was doing, he had to put it down and quickly enter the palace. This was the fastest way to transmit military intelligence in ancient times. It was a signal transmission method other than the smoke signal. At this time, in Yuqi Gong's mansion, Qing Yao Jin and the others were sitting around the sand table, arranging their troops. While they were arguing until their faces were red, they suddenly heard the faint sound of a gong. Yuqi Gong and the others' faces changed greatly. They hurried out of the room and listened carefully. At this time, they heard the melodious sound of a horn coming from the gate of Chang'an city. They couldn't help but change their expressions. Let's go. Enter the palace. Someone, prepare 3 horses. Qing Yaojin roared, picked up the broad axe on the shoulder of the guard in the corner, and quickly rushed out of Yu Qigong's mansion. After that, the 3 of them didn't even have time to put on their official robes. They each took their weapons and hurried to the imperial city. They didn't know what had happened to the emperor. This was a communication method that they were familiar with, but also strange to them. Only they, who had experienced the change of the Xuanwu Gate, knew the meaning of it. But now, the emperor was using it. It was obvious how serious the situation was at this time. How could the 3 of them dare to say anything? Along the way, the horse whips cracked loudly. But even so, it still took them almost an hour to arrive at the imperial study. As soon as they entered, Qing Yaojin was the first to raise his broad axe and say, "General Qing Yaojin greets the emperor." "Rise, rise. Let me ask you, have you discussed any countermeasures?" Hearing this, Qing Yaojin glanced at Yu Qigong and said, "Your Majesty, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter. But old man Yuqi said that he wants to change the route to enter Jinla from Tubo. Let me ask you, what do you think is wrong?" Li Shimin impatiently interrupted Qing Yaojin, looked at the 3 of them again and asked, "I want to know, what do you think is wrong?" Hearing this, Qing Yaojin then said, "It's the food problem of Tubo and Jinla. No matter if it's 50,000 or 100,000 people, according to our informants, currently India and Tubo are all affected by the food shortage, especially Tubo and the Turks. Although Jinla has been trading with us before, it can only be regarded as using the power of the whole country to stockpile food for 100,000 people. So, I feel that there is something wrong with this matter. It's completely unnecessary. Especially Tubo. Does it need to go through so much trouble to quell internal strife?" After Qing Yaojin finished speaking, Li Shimin's expression became more dignified, and he pointed at Yu Qigong and Yu Qigong. The 2 of them said basically the same thing as Qing Yaojin. Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but thump. He said, "You should have heard about the crown prince coming down the mountain just now, right?" The news he brought was that Fengzi said that this was a conspiracy of the Turks, and he suspected that old thief Tuli's 100,000 elites had already entered Tubo and India. But I feel that since Tuli has made a move, it's impossible for Shili to not make a move. Hearing this, Qing Yaojin and the other 2's expressions changed greatly. Li Shimin continued, "So, I feel that it's very likely that Shili has also mobilized at least 100,000 troops." Chapter 735. What? Shili also made a move? Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other 2's expressions changed greatly. Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, do you mean that the Indian army this time is likely to have gathered Shili Tuli's elites and mixed in with the Indian army? Do they mean the hinterland of the Tang dynasty?" Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and pointed at the map. "Do you think that if all the available people of the Tang dynasty go to Tubo and Jinla, and the Turkic elites descend from the sky from anywhere in this open space? Who in the Tang dynasty can stop them?" Li Shimin pointed at Longyu Road, Guanyi Road, and Jiannan Road, which was close to Tubo. Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the other 2's eyes showed a trace of shock. If the emperor hadn't pointed it out, then, who would have thought of this? If all the available troops went to Tubo and India, it would inevitably cause an internal emptiness. Once the Turkic people appeared, it would be too late even if they wanted to go back to help. Yu Qigong and the other 2 couldn't help but be angry. If the kid on the mountain hadn't discovered it in time, they might have fallen into the trap by now. Yu Qigong didn't know what to do at this time. He asked, "Then, should we send the troops now?" Li Shimin looked at the map in silence. "Yuqi, let me ask you 3. Now that you know the situation, do you still want to send the troops?" This time, Yu Qigong and the other 2 were stumped. If they went, what would happen to the Tang dynasty? If they didn't go, wouldn't they be subjected to public opinion? By then, wouldn't those countries dependent on the Tang dynasty be in chaos? This was really a dilemma. Seeing that the 3 didn't speak, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel disappointed. But thinking about it, even he didn't dare to make a conclusion on this matter so easily. It could only be said that the person who came up with this idea had calculated the situation of the Tang dynasty to the smallest detail. Send the troops. This would give them a chance to head south. If they did not send troops, the Tang dynasty would also be in danger due to public opinion. This was simply vicious to the extreme. Forget it. You guys go back and arrange the route first. Do what you should do as usual. Let me think about it first. The three of them were shocked. He hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, you, get out." Li Shimin coldly shouted. Only then did the three of them leave the imperial study. Li Qingxian also wanted to leave, but Li Shimin didn't say anything, and he didn't dare. He could only stand there quietly. Li Shimin quietly looked at the map, and Li Qingxian also unconsciously looked at the map. Thinking back to what Zhang Feng had just said, he couldn't help but say, "Father, Feng Zi just told us something." "Speak." Feng Zi said that if we were given a sandbox and a setting, how would we be able to arrange a perfect formation on the sandbox when the people who set us up are running out of food and the neighboring country is rich in resources? Li Shimin was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly waved his hand and came to the study on the right side of the imperial study with Li Qingxian. In the corner of the study, there was a sandbox covered with red gauze, which had long been covered with dust. Li Shimin tore off the gauze. It was a huge sandbox of the Tang dynasty, the surrounding countries, Sherwei, Goguryeo, and other countries. Li Shimin bent over, squinted his eyes, and used a bamboo stick to make some gestures. After a long time, he pointed at the tubo. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. He sighed and said, "Qian, how long do you think it will take to make the invincible spear that Feng Zi mentioned?" This time, Li Qingxian asked the question. Li Qingxian thought for a moment before saying, "Father, I think that Feng Zi might be able to make it in 10 days. However, if he wants to equip the entire army, it will take at least a month. At the very least, this is if Feng Zi goes all out and cooperates with all the top blacksmiths of the Tang Empire. That might be possible. A month? 10 days? It's too late." Li Shimin slammed his fist on the sandbox. "Let's go to the mountain. I want to ask Feng Zi in person." After Li Shimin finished speaking, he hurriedly walked away with large strides. Li Qingxian stared blankly for a moment before hurriedly following. As soon as they left the imperial study, Qing Chumo and the others, whose legs were numb from waiting, were about to salute Li Shimin, but he ignored them and left in a hurry. Looking at Li Shimin's back, they were dumbfounded. They were just ignored by Yu Qigong and the others, and now they were ignored by the emperor. They seriously wondered if they had provoked someone. Did it have to be like this? Seeing Li Qingxian come out, they grabbed him and asked, "Qingxian, what's going on? We just heard that the emperor seemed to be angry." Li Qingxian flicked his sleeves and glared at them, but he didn't say anything. He hurriedly said, "Quickly follow the emperor to the mountain. Don't ask too much. I'll tell you later." Hearing this, they were even more dumbfounded. But seeing the emperor and Li Qingxian running away in a hurry, they could only look at each other and then hurriedly follow.